Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for October 23rd, 2018. Madam Clerk.
Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras v. Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., San Francisco County Superior Court Case Number CGC 1856445.
Any board comments? Any public comments in this item?
See, just like the marijuana growers, if they can do it, I can do it. Good morning. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. I would like to talk to you about this PG&E thing for a second. 9:15 last night I was getting diapers, and at 4:15 this morning I was driving to see you folks. You have to give some sort of update. Just a little, it doesn't have to be substantive, it just has to show that you're working on it and that you're making progress towards an eventual settlement or end or going to court on it. It just looks bad in the public eye, and you need to give the press something to grab a hold of and report on. The public wants to know. I realize that it's a closed session item, but it doesn't have to be substantive. And you don't give it to Megan to write the statement. Give it to somebody else. She's being, as you know, her term is up, and we have to work on succession now. Who's going to be next after Megan? You guys have to talk to Judy and have it put out there that you're looking for a new county council, unless you want to continue with Megan, which I don't recommend. Okay, go for the next one.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2, conference with labor negotiator. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Service Employees International Union.
Any board comments? Seeing none, any public comments?
Wonderful. You know, it's great that you guys have Judy Hawkins working on this. She's a fantastic asset to the county. One thing that you're overlooking in all these negotiations is the work boot allowance. You guys should get work boots too. Every one of you, I want to see you out there and talking to the road crews and getting out there with the businesses that are being established and construction sites and seeing what those people need as well. In fact, every department head should get work boot allowance as well, including Mr. Lutz here. Sorry, I'm really sorry for you. It gets better.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll go into closed session. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for October 23rd, 2018. Please rise if you can for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can you please read out from our closed session?
Absolutely. Report of closed sessions held on October 16th, 2018. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Calaveras Cannabis Legal Defense Fund et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al. Calaveras Superior Court Case Number 18CV43043. There was no reportable action taken. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken. The report of today's closed sessions, Item 1, Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras versus Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., San Francisco County Superior Court Case Number CG 1856445, there was no reportable action taken. Item 2, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with county designated labor negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization Service Employees International Union. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to announcements.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Are there any board announcements? Supervisor Garamendi, your light's on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to remind everybody that on this Thursday, the 25th at 6 p.m., there'll be a town hall held at Mountain Ranch Community Center. We'll be discussing the county tree mortality program, as well as PG&E will be there, talk about their tree program. And so if you have questions, bring them. Central Fire will be a key part of this as well. If you have questions, come to Town Hall, Mountain Ranch, 6 p.m. this Thursday, and ask your questions. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yes, on November 11th, it's Veterans Day, the VFW in Copperopolis will be putting on their annual parade. And for anyone that's interested, there are forms available for those that want to actually participate in the parade.
Any other board announcements? Seeing none. Any staff announcements? Any staff member? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, public comments.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Good morning. My name is Gary Caldwell from Valley Springs. I'm here this morning, members of the board, to encourage you to adopt a resolution, not today, but needs to be agendized. Resolution similar to what was adopted by the Council of Governments at its most recent meeting with regard to opposing Proposition 6. I'm sure you're well aware of that proposition in SB 1, in that it provides, if it were to continue, provides $50 billion for transportation improvements over the next 10 years. And I wanted to give this to the clerk in case you want to do something like this for your resolution. And also to encourage the board to educate and inform its electorate on the advantages and benefits of Prop 6 for Calaveras County. As a matter of fact, according to the information that the Council of Governments had, it appears that Calaveras County, just in fiscal 18-19, will have $2.4 million in projects, primarily resurfacing projects, for its benefit of Prop 6. And I think the members of the board who are well aware of gas funds, transportation funds, know that there has not been an increase in gas tax monies since 1994. There has been some allegation that there will be a diversion of the monies collected over to the general fund. That's the transportation funds are constitutionally protected, and those of you who remember Prop 42 are aware of this. There is an estimated shortfall in needs. The needs throughout the state of California are about 130 billion. This measure, Prop 6, will generate approximately 50 billion over a 10-year period. And you can't expect the rainy day fund that's been set aside by the governor is not intended to be used for transportation projects, besides the fact it's only got $9 billion in it. So that, and their promises have already been made that it will go toward education and law enforcement and health.
Thank you.
Oh, is that it? Okay,
I'll give you my 3 minutes, but
thank you.
what can I say? How you guys doing? Good to see you again. Not getting much sleep these days. I'm going to talk to you today about, does everybody know who the Calaveras County paper record is? You guys do, right? Good, good. It's Valley Springs News down there. Just making sure, because sometimes there's confusion with some of you folks. I know all about it. Okay, let's talk about the succession of the county council. As you know, her term is up pretty soon. I think it's November 23rd or October 23rd, or then it's already up. And I know a lot of you think that having her on board for another 4 years might be a good idea, since she had so much to do with a lot of the litigation that's going on now. But actually, that's a bad idea. The problem is you have a bit of a conflict of interest there, since a lot of the litigation that's taking place, a lot of those ordinances, a lot of the input have to do with county council herself in that office. As you know, in the past, I brought the idea forward of having outside counsel for Calaveras County. Even though I believe in it, I think it's way too late at this time. But you have to start thinking about succession, unless you want to do the bonehead move of keeping her as county counsel for another 4 years. You have some candidates in your in county council's offices right now. Julie Lewis is quite competent. She's probably the only one that I get a little scared of. Only one, and but I like her too as a person. I think she's a very nice person, easy to work with. I'm not saying Megan's not a nice person. I just think that having an attorney that went to an unaccredited law school, that did not have didn't have a good enough experience as an assistant county counsel and filling that role, especially in a county that's as small as Calaveras County. She didn't have a wide scope of cases to deal with, and probably just not enough, just not the quantity that is needed, and that you have to work your way through. There are a lot of people out there that I know that make fantastic county councils, and you should just open the door to everybody that is qualified to submit an application and come in for an interview for that position. It's not only a managerial position. You have to have some brains. As I said, I don't think Megan's really a terrible person. She's different.
Good morning. I'm Will Moore from Valley Springs, Rancho Calaveras, and I feel I owe the board an apology. Last time I was up here, I kind of implicated you guys in a land scheme over abandoning a street right away. And I have since gone to the Hall of Records and gotten a picture of this thing. And I'm pretty sensitive about this whole movement in this country about giving public land away to private interest and so forth and so on. Kind of thought that what was going on. I lived a lot of years in Alaska, and there's a lot of public land in Alaska, and there are a lot of schemes going on up there to transfer public property over to private ownership. So I'm pretty aware of that. You know, Senator Stevens' Bridge to Nowhere was a real estate scam. Anyhow, in the verbal description, before I saw the picture, talking about a street with two sides but no ends. You know, every street has two sides and two ends, but somehow the verbiage was only dealing with the sides. So now that I have a picture of it, I can see what the issue was, and it's not a big issue. So, thank you.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Double Springs Road's about 2 miles long. There's a little offshoot going to the north called Gillum Road. It's a one-lane, works into a gravel road, heads out towards Paloma Dump. Anyway, about 100 yards off Gillum, there's a abandoned gold mine. Now, this old gold mine was in production for about 100 years. It was owned and maintained and run by a man named Winchester McCarty. Winchester McCarty was the last living heir to the Winchesters over there on the coast. He ended up buying a gold mine, opening a machine shop, lived there as a bachelor his whole life with his mother, Civil War widow, dressed totally in black from head to toe, had white hair that stuck out. She ran around Double Springs with a inoperable shotgun looking for the Indians that stole her laundry off the line. Anyway, old man McCarty run this mine, and he had miners down in this mine, and it had chutes all over the area. He was down there one day with the assayer, Bill White, Joseph White. Year was 1957. Then two crawled out of the mine. First they went down in the mine and talked to the miners. Which way do you think we should go next? Plan a course for their next mining excursion. And they had a plan. So they came out of the mine, and by God, if those miners didn't hit an underground lake, they all died. They drowned, met their watery grave down there underneath Double Springs. 7 local miners from local families all perished that day. I was going to get their names, but the gentleman couldn't quite remember them. And I heard this story from 3 or 4 different sources. Some of them said, I never heard anybody died. I knew the mine filled up with water. But 2 or 3 other people said, yeah, there was 7 guys down there, passed away. Anyway, there's a lot of history on Double Springs. You drive up Gillum, you can still see the remnants of the mine. There used to be a derrick there and ore carts and a lot of metal stuff when I first moved there in the 70s. That's all disappeared over the years. Kind of like the stories disappear. If they're not there to remind you, you don't ever know they happened. You don't ever know the history. There's a lot of history. Thank you.
Rapana Randall Smith, District 3. As I'm sure everyone is aware, there was a recent article in the Union Democrat about the sales tax numbers collapsing here in Calaveras County. That is, all the sales taxes that are collected on goods and services that we all pay for. We're all familiar with it. We've done it our whole lives. I just have a couple things I want to mention about that article. And first of all, I want to thank Mr. Lutz. At the very least, he acknowledged those numbers are there, called them alarming or concerning. He said 29% is the negative in Q3, but whereas the report from California says it's negative 23% for the third quarter. That's probably because of the way you guys receive the money in quarterly payments and monthly payments. It's not that simple. But the reports that we found online with the state are official government reports, been published quarterly for a very long time, the real numbers. I do have one thing I want to address that Mr. Lutz said, and that is he had stated that sales tax is not by economic definition a metric that indicates a recession. That we could parse words on that, but I do have, and I've shared with you, according to the California Employment Development Department, there are 7 economic indicators. They are business employment dynamics, California Consumer Price Index, income data service search tool, per capita personal income by county, quarterly workforce indicators, worker adjustment and retraining notification, also related to employment, and finally, taxable sales in California by county. The numbers are real, and they mean something. As I said in the article, or as I shared with the press a couple of days ago, the data fits your decisions like a glove. Just does, in real time. When you push out hundreds of businesses and their families and their workers, of course you're going to see a reduction in the sales tax and in the economy. Now, one thing I also want to mention, Dennis, you know, when you present evidence, or that you call evidence, you cited things in the article like what was it, cell phones and alcohol, tobacco. Did you actually cite those? Well, whatever you cited, you didn't provide any evidence. You didn't say where you got your numbers. You just pulled them out of the air. When I made this information public, I made darn sure anybody can review what I did. That I said, this is where you can get the data. This is what it says. You can check it out yourself. You will verify the data. Dennis, you have never done that, okay? You are a propagandist, and you're a disgrace. I hate to come in here and be like this in public, but man, you really deserve to be called out for the liar that you are. You've destroyed this economy. This situation, you own it, along with the other 2 that voted for the ban. This is your economy. You don't get to wiggle out on it.
Thank you. Other public comment? And if you wish to comment, please stand up in the back of the room.
Good morning, Kathy Topol, Common Ground Senior Services. A couple of weeks ago, I believe the Board of Supervisors did a proclamation against bullying. And I just think you should all take a look at that again, especially you, Mr. Clapp. I am asking you today to treat people with respect. This includes staff. This includes community members, and especially volunteers. Volunteers are the backbone of our community, and to be slapped and verbally abused is unacceptable by professional supervisors. Thank you.
Good morning, Marty Crane. Thank you for that, Kathy. Last meeting, I felt compelled to speak on the whisper campaigns because of a letter that I had received, and I believe most people in the county received this letter from a candidate for sheriff, and it gives me no joy whatsoever to bring this up. But I mentioned that because when I read that letter, I had to read it several times because it felt like just a smear campaign. It was like innuendos, and it reminded me of whisper campaigns. This is the definition of a whisper campaign. A whisper campaign or whisper campaigns is a method of persuasion in which damaging rumors or innuendos are spread about the target, while the source of the rumors seeks to avoid being detected while spreading them. It's generally considered unethical in open societies, particularly in matters of public policy. What I want to caution us all is that we are a community, small communities, larger communities, one big community. And when campaigns come along, we cannot allow political differences to get in the way of how we treat each other. We need to give each other the respect. You can trust but verify, but when I come up and say something, I'm sharing with you what I understand from my experience through my lens, and others will do the same. It's not, I do this quite often, so, but a lot of people, it's very difficult for them to step up here and share themselves. And so when they do, we need to give them the respect of knowing, respect the fact that they are sharing what they know from their lens. And if you disagree, you should probably say, hey, can we talk later? Because I have another lens to show you on that, and maybe we could come to consensus. Consensus has been a word that we've had a hard time with in this county for years, and I'm hoping that we can come together, learn to embrace and expand this sense of community and work for solutions. We have a lot of people out there in the county that are working towards solutions, and it would be nice if we all talk about them and move them forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Vicki Ranke, Calaveras County. I just, again, wasn't planning on getting up, but, you know, we keep hearing, and I thank you for the definition of a whisper campaign, because I didn't know what that was. That's what I see happening when I come to the board meetings and listen to people get up and say things to our supervisors, Supervisor Clapp, Supervisor Mills. Every single meeting, there's someone getting up here to disparage. And what I don't get is where the facts behind it are. So I just agree with that we shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. It's not necessary. And people can make their choices about who they vote for and what they believe in. And just so you know about this tax information, the reason we have a ban in Calaveras County is because a majority of the people do not want commercial cultivation of marijuana. I have been involved in this for about 3 years. I talk to a lot of people, and I know that a lot of them won't say it out loud, but that's why we have a ban, because it's something the people that live here want. So I just wanted to clarify that again. Thank you.
Neil McEwen, District 4. Let's talk about facts. The county is facing a $10 million budget shortfall, which continues to grow at a roaring pace due to the growth of county government combined with a destructive economic policy decision. Making local county government the single largest economic driver is not something to be proud of, but it's this board's largest economic accomplishment. Utilizing this bloated government to increase property taxes and levy a punitive total cost recovery model for code enforcement will not pave the way to economic vitality. This is the least sustainable path for the health and safety of the local economy. Without the infusion of a real non-governmental economic driver with positive revenue generation, we will be facing the impact of this board's fiscal mismanagement in very short order. Bankruptcy. No one should be surprised by this. For two of you, this is your MO. It's who you are. It's what you do. Clyde, you claim to have retired in 1974 when you were 30 because you were such a successful contractor. Court-ordered documents of your personal budget show the opposite, in fact. During 1989, you were running your own deficit, spending nearly 38% more annually than you were generating. Is this a pattern, or were you just trying to get out of paying alimony? Clyde, you actually filed for bankruptcy in December of 2001. It seems strange that you, someone so well off that you were able to retire so young, would need to take such action. That is, unless you were simply trying to avoid paying someone else what you owe them. Or was it because, ironically enough, you didn't want to pay the fines and fees associated with your rental properties that you allowed to fall into disrepair? Were there not serious citations filed against you for broken septic lines that allowed sewage to openly flow on your properties? Did you not choose to file bankruptcy to skip out on paying the county $85,000 in back taxes? Dennis, you filed for bankruptcy in '95 to avoid paying your debts, right or wrong. For as long as the two of you have sat at the dais, you have both shown nothing but disdain for this county and its well-being. Your combined efforts to destroy this county are deplorable. The gross mismanagement of this county's business lies at your feet. The deceit you have perpetuated to try and confuse the public will be clear to all soon enough, and your reign of terror will end on Election Day.
Good morning. Chris Johncoats, District 2. I too am concerned with facts, and I haven't seen any facts that suggest there's a majority of the county that feels one way or the other about the cannabis issue. We all have our ideas about where people stand, but let's talk about facts. I imagine the next thing that's going to happen is going to be some explanation about the sales tax drop-off and how this wasn't related to cannabis banning and all these other things. Well, I have some facts. I was associated with 3 half-acre farms, and amongst our farms, we spent greater than $500,000 a year in Calaveras County in Mountain Ranch at Senders and at All Seasons Topsoil. That's just 3 farms. It's inconceivable that the banning of cannabis is not driving down the sales tax revenue of Calaveras County dramatically, and I would love to see an analysis of just the impact on District 2 versus the rest of the county, because you've devastated the entire district. I know that All Seasons is down more than 90% in sales since this happened. We cannot deny this anymore or pretend it's something else. This is what has happened. This is what everyone knew was going to happen. So own it. I appreciate your point of view. If you think we should have a ban, we should have a ban. Be truthful about what is happening so people can make decisions based on the facts. That's all I think is fair to everybody on both sides. I know the next thing that's going to happen is going to be a dismissal of what this says, and there's no way around it. If I didn't spend $600,000 in Mountain Ranch amongst 3 farms, it's certainly, I'm not the only one. And we know this has had a tremendous impact. I'm wearing my Calaveras fire shirt today. I got this shirt before the Butte fire. The first year I moved here, when I found out there was a pancake breakfast, and I said, we got to go. We need to go support the fire people and become part of the community. We went to that pancake breakfast that day. And I still support Calaveras Fire, and I still support the Mountain Ranch community. And it's being devastated. I don't know what else to say. And we have the numbers now that show it. And we need to live in facts. And as far as disparaging supervisors, they're being called out for their actions. So if you want the call-outs to stop, quit acting that way. It's not slander if it's true. And it's not disparaging if it's calling out an action that occurred that was bad. You need to stop the action and then the call out stop. It's not disparaging when it's true. And we need to get over this. It shouldn't be happening because the supervisors shouldn't be acting that way. We shouldn't have the law enforcement being called on our county supervisors because of their actions in public forums. This is ridiculous.
Again, if you're going to speak for public comment, you need to get in line. Any further public comment?
Good morning, Board. On the subject of the decrease in sales taxes and increase in sales taxes, yeah, I believe probably the cannabis industry had some portion in that. But after every natural disaster, you're going to see that happen, an increase in sales. I know a lot of people spend a lot of money repairing their properties, their homes, putting things back that were no longer there. That money doesn't continue to get spent once those structures are replaced. So that's another reason why you see a decrease in purchases. It isn't, I mean, we come here every week and it seems like cannabis is the answer to everything in this county. It's not. What I'm afraid of is if we go back to making cannabis the driving force behind the economy of our county, what's going to happen is the bottom is going to fall out of the cannabis market. You see nationally, there's greater push to legalize it. Once it becomes legalized nationally, it's going to be taken over by the tobacco companies and large corporations. The small farms are going to go by the wayside. That's going to disappear in Calaveras County. That's just a fact. That's the way it's going. The push behind the whole cannabis industry is coming from large corporations that want to take it over. So it would be stupid to put all our eggs in that one basket, but that seems that over and over we hear that every meeting. We need to move on. There's other things we can do to drive our economy because now The infrastructure has been rebuilt. We need to start attracting other kind of businesses back into Calaveras. And we need to kind of get off this train that there's only one way that we're going to survive as a county, and that's through cannabis. This county was surviving before the cannabis was legal. Yes, we had up and downs in this county, and that's going to come again, but it's frustrating to keep hearing that. And then we hear about whisper campaigns, you know, that we shouldn't have those, and then one after another, we have the whisper campaigns going in here. We've seen them, we saw them in the primary elections. Whisper campaigns that went out against one of our supervisors that were just absolute lies, horrible things. That's just politics today. It's sad that it's that way. But it'd be nice if this county, we could learn to bring civility back into politics and quit pointing fingers at people and ripping them apart and tearing them down, but just stick to the issues. You know, I'd love to see that, but I probably won't. Thank you.
Good morning. I got up here and talked to you guys last week, I think it was last week, about the idea of maybe tying your salaries to some kind of economic indicator. And one of the ideas that occurred to me was California sales tax, local sales tax revenues relative to the state, in which case we're outperforming the state by about 2.5 times in the race to the bottom, so go. And having watched this board look for novel solutions to raising funds for the county government, from crazy fines with the new proposed 8.06 being one example, and others I won't bother with, I would like to propose one for you to consider. The way Measure C was written, as some of you know, all cultivation sites in the county over a certain square footage were considered to be quote-unquote commercial, and under Measure C were required to be taxed, whether they were registered or not. And I've heard arguments from the county, people in council's office, for example, understandable reasons why they chose not to pursue that. I'd like to hear you explain that one to the voters. I'd love the public to weigh in on that decision, because at the time there was about 700 and some registrants who paid $13.7-ish million into the general fund, and by county estimates there was 3,000 others on top of those who didn't. And you've got the aerials that the registrants paid for to identify them, you've got the APNs, you've got the tools and the mechanisms to enlarge, not just enforce it, but collect on them. And so I just wanted to point this out to members of the public who might not be aware that under Measure C, that the voters passed by a substantial margin, all those people are required to pay. And with all the crying about being broke and needing more money for everything that goes on here in the county government, why wouldn't you pursue the single biggest revenue stream out there? And I don't know the details of the tax laws and how long you have retroactively to go back after them, but probably 7 years. And you've got the tools at your disposal. Just something to think about. Have a good one.
Hi, my name is Janice Bassett from Valley Springs, and I just want to remind you all that we do have a wonderful show coming up on November 3rd at the San Andreas at the Metropolitan, and this event supports the Valley Springs Youth and Family Center, the Volunteer Center, the Optimist Club, and Valley Springs Makers. Now, Valley Springs Makers is about to make a very big impact on our school district in Calaveras Unified. Our board member, he's a scientist and an inventor named Dennis Shelgren. He had a presentation at the school board meeting, and they're going to work together and see how they can cooperate and collaborate and make curriculum in the school district classrooms. So it's very exciting. It's going to open a door up for a lot of resources to come in. So I just want you all to come to the show. support these efforts. November 3rd at 3 p.m. at the Metropolitan. Thank you.
And with that, I'll close public comment period, move on to consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Is there any board member wish to pull an item? Supervisor Mills.
Yes, Chair, number 6 and number 9.
Any other board member? I would like to pull item number 13. Any staff member? Any member of the public?
I'll be pulling your entire consent agenda today, numbers 3 through 17. Including number 6.
Well, it's already been pulled. Sorry. All right. We will take a 10-minute break.
Thank you. Okay, that'll be
All right, we're back in session. Mr. Stoughton, I understand you have an announcement, and then you have some comments.
Well, you know, what eats me is that every week people pull items from this consent agenda. Every week there's something controversial on there. Every week somebody wants to make a political move and get their name in the paper because they support something that everybody supports anyway. Can we please stop doing this? Can we just have a consent agenda that's a consent agenda from now on? And I will remove my request. I'll take my request back for having 3 through 17 pulled from the consent agenda. But I just ask you to do this, folks. Okay? Are you good? You guys good on this? To start behaving like normal board of supervisors? I know it's tough. I know it's tough, people. But consent agenda is a consent agenda. If you have questions about items, you get this thing in the middle of the week proceeding, and you can go to the department heads and have a discussion about these items and get anything cleared up. A lot of this, the public doesn't need to hear about, doesn't want to hear about. Okay? And it's just, it drags people on that have other things they want to do that are on the regular agenda. Staff, you waste staff time, you waste the public's time, you waste consultants' time. There's just no way around this. You have to start behaving like a normal board of supervisors. And I won't say anything about those pictures you have up there either, but the boardroom is getting to look more and more like a garage sale. Okay?
Thank you. Can I ask the people out in the foyer to please keep it down? We can hear you in here, and when the door opens, it's really loud. So if you could please just keep down out there. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. Supervisor Mills, you pulled item number 6.
Chair.
Would you like me to
Chair,
read
would
it?
you like to approve the balance of the budget then if
Oh,
Carl?
yes, I'm sorry. I'm moving forward too quickly here.
I would make that motion to,
I'm looking for a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
A motion by Supervisor Clapp,
Second.
second by Supervisor Mills. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, can you read item number 6?
Item 6 is from the Economic Development Department to adopt a resolution supporting the Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solution, CHIPS, Wilseyville Biomass Project.
Supervisor Mills.
Yes, Chair. The reason that I had asked to have this pulled is because I had requested of Economic Development additional information prior to making my decision, and as of this point, it was not forthcoming. So I would like to have a well-rounded look at the past activity of this particular CHIPS program and what the plan is for the future before we make a decision to support.
Ms. Galino?
Good morning, Chair Tofinelli and Supervisors. I'm Kathy Galino with the Economic Development Department, and both Steve Walensky and Robert Zellers are here today to talk about the information that is being passed out right now. There are also copies for the public discussing the project going forward and their grant application to really stimulate job growth and the economy in Calaveras County. So with that, I will have Mr. Walensky come up. He just had hip replacement surgery a week ago. Thank you for bringing it. And then after that, Robert will speak, and then I'll come up and finish off any other questions. Thank you.
Good morning, and I'm grateful that the clock doesn't start ticking until you get up to the podium today. I'm not breaking land speed records. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to address you on this issue. My name is Steve Walensky. I am the chair of the CHIPS Board of Directors, and I was a founding member 14 years ago. After I had run for office, actually, on a pledge to try to develop jobs and an economy in a devastated area of the county after the closure of up to 22 mills in a period of 70 years. We have had a lot of boom and bust in this county, but in particular, the demise of the timber industry has done damage not just to our economy and my immediate neighborhood of Blue Mountain communities, but as well to the health of our forests, the fire danger and risk. The inability to have a forest infrastructure has actually created a lot of ancillary problems for our county. CHIPS was formed 14 years ago. Our motto is doing good with wood. We are dedicated to the task of trying to reestablish a diversified forest economy based on restoration and stewardship of this part of the range of light, but also to have value-added infrastructure back in the county. Toward that end, we bought an old mill site, the Associated Office Mill in Wilseyville, and are busy converting it. We've gone through the gauntlet of 3,000 pages of reports and environmental review. We have spent 6 years in that process and have come out successfully in both getting the entitlements for a 3-megawatt power plant under SB 1122, and which would use woody biomass to create 3 megawatts of power. We have also, in what some see as a miracle, received a a power purchase agreement from PG&E of 19.972 cents per kilowatt under the state statute that permitted and in fact required that. We have 42 employees. Many of them come from backgrounds that have been quite challenging. Some of the referral points in this county are your social services department, welfare to work, your probation department, people getting back into the swing of things. CHIPS is a good entry point for people getting a job and getting to prove themselves. We drug test, and we're very careful to make sure that people are working safely. We've had no injuries this year at all, which in 42 people working in the forest with chainsaws, that's a pretty good year, but we've had 4 such years. And that's because we spend a great deal of time training people. We give people S212 Sawyer certification training. We have a safety officer that provides that. He's a 4th-generation logger who knows his stuff. We also have recently certified 17 of our people on Basic 32 fire so that we can begin to reintroduce prescribed fire to help thin forests reduce the hazards of fire in this and other counties. I understand that some people are concerned that I heard rumors going around that whisper campaigns people talk about seem to affect many things here in Calaveras. But one of the things is that we have somehow not fulfilled our federal obligations. Let me try to respond to that. We have at least 14 contracts and agreements with federal agencies. They include Yosemite National Park, which we've just completed 2 years of work. We are doing meadow and trail restorations. We're also, you may have noticed the bug kill in the valley. Some of you have been down there. All those dead trees are now in piles down and have been cleared out, both because of the hazard, but also because of the health of forests is required to do that, and we've been very much a part of that. For those of you who travel up Highway 4, you may see 4,000 piles of biomass along the highway. That was CHIP's work. If you want to look further into the communities, we've had Fire Safe Council contracts in both Calaveras and Amador counties. We have stewardship agreements and contracts with 4 U.S. forests, including the Calaveras and Amador Ranger districts. That's the Stanislaus and El Dorado forests. If you drive up Highway 88, you will see 20-mile fuel break. It's called View 88. It goes on both sides of the highway. If you go up to South Shore on that highway, you will see that 20 miles of work, and that was all CHIPS this year. We're fulfilling our contracts and agreements. We have never been found in default of any of them. We have moved from a $7,500 grant funded operation 14 years ago to a $1.3 million organization with 42 employees and meeting every single obligation that we have ever signed agreements to. We've also helped bring in a total of close to $15 million into this county for forest restoration and stewardship and fire safe work. Our people are also deployed in the Butte fire restoration effort, cutting down hazard trees and trying to restore on private property some of the lands. You'll hear from people who know more than I do about CHIPS, the technical aspects of our conversion from a sawmill to a biomass plant. The proposal before you is simply a requirement of the U.S. Department of Commerce. It's the Economic Development Assistance Program. It represents about 7% of the total investment necessary to build our plant. You will be glad to know that that's the only governmental assistance that we are requesting, and we are required to come to your board by the nature and requirements of that application process for your endorsement. That's the reason we're here. Other counties are involved in this, and in many cases, the county supervisors themselves, and of course, given the previous discussion on the economic status of our situation here, we are not asking you for money. We're not asking you for anything but your head nod to say, go forward and build something that actually represents economic development in this county. There would be 75 new people working in the forests, as well as a total of close to 25 working on the plant site. There are so many benefits that I don't have time to describe, but Robert Zellers is here, who is our board engineer. Again, volunteer. All of us are volunteers. That's an unusual business model, but that's sometimes what you have to do to get something going in this county. There's just not a whole lot of economic development funds that are readily available unless you clear the deck, win the power purchase agreement, get all the entitlements. Then people start offering you investments. And right after this meeting, I'm meeting with a billionaire from Montana who says he'd like to fund it. We have 4 other possibilities for funding, all of which involve conventional and private sector investment, both equity and debt. We've won the Best of Tahoe Award for doing the tremendous work and fire-safe work around some of the communities. We have been widely recognized as an organization that came out of nowhere and built steadily each of our 14 years We've been less dependent on grants up to 4 or 5 years ago, at which point we had no grants and have been working with program income entirely. Ask any nonprofit in California and you'll find that that's an unusual business model, but it's our intention to be able to help recreate a forest economy that will be diversified, will have value-added work, employ a lot of people locally, and begin to increase the pace and scale of work in taking all this wood that's down. Everybody's front yard is a log deck in my community. And where does it go? Where are we going to take it? And is there any economy to be made off it? That's what we were trying to answer. We'd be delighted to answer any questions any of the supervisors have, or anybody else in this audience. And I also feel compelled to say one other thing here. I hope it doesn't embarrass anybody, but given previous comments, I want to say that Megan Studfield is intelligent, accomplished, smart, and I hate to see any of you cast as people of anything less than that. It's very disappointing from this point of view to hear the personal comments that have been made.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yes, thank you for stepping up, Mr. Walensky. I think the primary issue that I had is that I have 4 paragraphs in a discussion summary, and I've got a resolution underneath it, and I've got no background information from which to develop, what direction to go. That to me is concerning, because we're in essence going to be, how should I say it, giving you our blessing, as you say, and without knowing what all of this, how this all fits. I've been very aware of your project for a long time. And as we started to talk about the master stewardship agreement potential here in Calaveras County, the one thing that I did not want to do is step into an area where your work is already taking place. Just like we don't want to step into the Cornerstone project, we don't want to step into the UMRA work. There's a lot of other issues and other areas of success that I think we need to stay clear of. But however, I always have to play that when you talk about what's going on over in Tuolumne County. You're talking YSS and what role and relationship is going on there. So there's a lot of moving parts to all of this, and I have to question. It says in the summary, will provide 3 megawatts of power. So you're currently not providing power?
That's correct. What we have is all of our entitlements and the remediation of the mill site have been completed, but we have not yet started to build, nor can we until we have arranged the full financing, which approximates about $24 million. And one of the first things we have to do is secure the site in terms of the requirements. We have to have a security gate. We have to make sure that the site is fully remediated. We have to put the power and the water lines in. We have to make sure that wastewater, all of the permits that we have received and entitlements are fulfilled. And so the first state of that was agreed, or at least when we made our presentation to EDAP, Economic Development Assistance Program. They're headquartered in Seattle. So at our own expense, we flew up and talked to their entire staff about our project. They were impressed enough to request us to put in an application, one piece of which requires us not just to put in literally hundreds of pages of documents, which we did offer your organization. We said, does the board want to see the whole thing, or would you like to see the 3,000 pages of entitlement studies and other things that went into the project, which is in the hands of your planning department. But we were told that you had enough to consider and that this would be way too much overload. We're happy to share any information that you would like to see on it, and a lot of it's up on our website.
Thank you. Having gone through what Utica Water and Power has done with their green waste energy, and you know that they went through a grant to try to determine what kind of fuel loading was available to them. One of the big stumbling blocks that they ran into was their PG&E interconnection agreement. And where that location exists and them thinking along the lines of moving out to the spray field there by the Frog Town because it puts it closer to the lines. You're very remote where you are. And so that interconnection agreement is a critical piece of whether or not you're going to be successful in actually putting power into the PG&E system.
Very much so. That's very observant. We had been through 3 years of discussions and 2 interconnection studies conducted by PG&E. We paid for them ourselves. And we are, out of all the projects in California, there are at least a dozen that have gone through the same process. We came out the lowest cost of any of them, and we are very pleased to say that we are located in the exact perfect spot. One is for interconnection, as you note, but the other is that many of the forest projects and the amount of biomass in our immediate area, and we conducted a study and a fuel procurement plan we had to commission for, I can't remember, maybe $50,000, and it showed that we had 70,000 bone-dry tons in the immediate area per year already being produced with the projects that are underway. So we've got both fuel procurement secured, a PG&E agreement that will be the lowest of the interconnection fees of the dozen. By far, actually, we're half of the next runner-up. So we think we've done pretty well in selecting our site. It was, after all, a mill, so they had a good draw on power, and not much has changed in terms of the draw on power in the Blue Mountain area, except that we lost quite a few homes in the fire. So looks good for that.
Not for a moment do I question your location. I think, not moving mass around, that's a very expensive proposition, and that's something that even Utica Water was looking at. The other thing that they ran into in green power was they had to go to the state legislature, if you recall, and get the blessing to get past the Public Utilities Commission to move forward with what they did. And still they're into a financial corner right now where they just don't have the money to pull it all together, so to speak. Are you going to run into that same problem?
I am pleased to say that I've had the opportunity to address the PUC on 2 occasions, and they voted 5-0 in favor of the project and having it sent through. The PUC did make us jump through hoops, as did the Army Corps of Engineers, as did we've done a spotted owl rollout, a monkey flower rollout, a detailed accounting of all cultural and historic events on the property. We had a wonderful woman from McCollum Hill do a 100 and some page study. No, I'm going to stick by my mic no matter what happens.
Sir.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm sorry to not be in my usual frisky shape, but I'm doing my best here. But yes, we've been through the PUC. We have one final hurdle, but we can't jump that until we have the on-the-ground stuff prepared. PG&E will require us to do testing, maybe as much as 6 months testing, in order to prove that the low emissions that we have pledged through the gasification technology that we've adopted is real. But you can't prove that ahead of time. What we've proven is that sites using the same technology are meeting that standard.
So you're talking about torrefication?
We're talking about gasification.
Gasification.
That's right.
The 3 megawatt number is very important.
Yes, it is.
Okay, just so you and I understand that value. We get up into that 4 and 5 range and rules change, and suddenly you're going to fall into a whole different world.
Yes, SB 1122 gives us a maximum of 3 megawatts, and we looked at the economy of scale required to actually make this pencil out, and we commissioned 2 pro formas using 2 different technologies to make sure that what we had penciled out. We're not going to make a lot of money. What we are going to do is employ a lot of people and do a lot of good out there in the forest based on this project. We know that this is, if I had known when I first volunteered 14 years ago to do this, that it was going to take us 14 years to get to this point, I would, that was maybe one of the worst life decisions I've made in some regards, and I should have known better. It takes a long time to get things done, and there's so many hurdles and so many. I don't know. Sometimes in Calaveras, it feels like we're all crabs in a bucket, and we're pulling each other down just as we get over the top. But we've run that. We are determined. We're tenacious. We're not going anywhere. We all live there, and our model of all volunteer administration and leadership has actually proven out. People have stayed with it all 14 years. We've had very little board turnover, although we do have a young man who does wish to answer any of your technical questions, who is here today. His name is Robert Zellers. He grew up in Glencoe. One of our own went off to school, got his engineering degree and master's, and is back as a volunteer board member for CHIPS, has been handling a lot of the details of the EDAP application. He wrote the executive summary that we were requested to provide you last Friday. We got notice that we needed to do that, and he had it ready today.
My question too is, are you exploring the green power component to not sell directly to PG&E, but to sell through Noble Energy or some other third-party provider?
I will tell you that there's only one way you can get a 20-year power purchase agreement at 19.972 cents, and that's through SB 1122, which requires us to buy through PG&E. There's no other option for our site. Now, if you ask me whether I would prefer to be dealing with another organization besides PG&E, that's a whole nother story. But those PUC appeals and the process that we went through indicates that they are not, there's a certain irony for PG&E trying to delay a project like this in a county that they just torched. And we tried to make that clear to them during our appeals process that they really ought to be supporting efforts like this. It would save their own infrastructure. In fact, one of the things CHIPS did, and I would certainly love for all of you to read it. Again, it's a long, long report. But if you look at the McCollum avoided cost analysis, the MACA, you will see along the McCollum watershed a study that shows what a small amount of prevention work would save East Bay Mud, PG&E, local property owners, insurance companies, and others. It actually has a direct correlation between what work we can do here, that employing our own people in preventing things like the Butte fire, how much of that would cost to do, and how much money it would save. The MACA is a good read for people who have a whole lot of time on their hands and have no real life to lead, but lots of scientists put that together. It cost us about $400,000 to do, and it was in response to East Bay Mud's request to prove. They said, well, yeah, you're all saying we can save you money. Of course, now after the Butte fire, I think we proved the point, but before that, people were saying, you can't show us that this much prevention or, for instance, this much meadow restoration produces this much water. That's why we brought a lot of scientists together and tried to study the subject, and we have, I believe, definitive answers to that question. Now, why East Bay Mud isn't paying for the plant or PG&E or any of the other beneficiaries of this kind of work, those partnerships really have to be created at your level and above. Those of us on the ground are calling for it, but it's a long ways off.
I appreciate you responding to my questions and concerns. Having done a recent tour within the last 7 days up in that area, I'm also aware that that's a Delta system. That's an old system. That's a dangerous system in terms of today's technology. It's not like Lathrop where they're on some weird KV number, but it still means that you're going to be having to put together a power plant to work within the Delta configuration, and that will create some additional challenges all by itself, as you are very aware.
Yes. We are, while we weren't 14 years ago, we have had an education in the extreme. I think maybe haven't graduated magna cum laude, but we have learned a lot running the gauntlet, and that is one of the remaining hurdles, and there will be costs, and that is part of the PG&E interconnection study that was given to us. If you want to know the actual dollar cost, it's $1,040,000.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I would like to hear from the public on this matter, but I'd like to take some time to actually read this and not be reading it while you're talking.
Yes, thank you.
So if it would take a moment to do
board
that.
questions? Any other member of the board? Supervisor Oliveira?
Mr. Chair, I want to reserve my comments and questions until after I've heard from the public on this.
Okay.
All right, that we'll open up to public comments.
Okay, be sure you hear from Robert at some point, because he's a really smart guy.
Chair, could we get a presentation from Robert? Could we get a presentation from Robert on some after public comment?
Public comments.
Public comments. I'm a member of the public. What can I say? First off, this is not the time for me to talk about the abilities of Megan Stedfield, or lack of. I think that that is a very low shot to bring it up when we're supposed to be speaking about something else, such as this right now, which we are speaking about, the biomass plant in West Point. My concern is not the biomass plant. I think that Steve Walensky has done a fantastic job since he's left office. While he was in office, he was a terrible supervisor, but since he's left office, I think he's done just a fantastic job. And with the CHIPS program, he has employed a lot of the people that I have known, I have grown up with, and I think that that's fantastic. A lot of these people couldn't get jobs any other way. My concern is here, this is on the consent agenda. This is a regular agenda item. It was pulled from the consent agenda because there is controversy regarding it. There's people that have concerns. There are people that want to support it. There are people that want to speak in favor of it. But they don't know about it. It was buried at number 6. At number 6 out of a 15-item consent agenda. It was purposely put where nobody could see it. If you want to bring this, it comes up in the acknowledgments. We have a part of the agenda that's usually reserved for acknowledgments and recognitions. That's where it would belong. Or you can put it on the regular agenda. Because one thing that does concern me is the county backing any enterprise. It's not your job. It's not your job to back something that is going to happen. You can back his CHIPS program. You can say the CHIPS program, as it stands, has done a fantastic job. It is a silver star rated program. You can't give it a gold star because it has some other it would have some other connotations to it. But as it stands now, this has to be heard as a regular agenda item. The information that was provided to you and provided to the public by staff, mind you, by staff, was provided at the last minute. It was not in the packet. It has to be in the packet if it's provided by staff usually. All right? Now they're going to say, well, we provided it to staff and staff provided it to you. Still, staff is working this, and they're working it hard. So I need this put on the regular agenda at some point. Maybe next year when you guys have more time. I'll come up here. Just for that. 29 seconds left. As I said, I harbor no grudge against Steve these days. I think it's a little underhanded for him to treat me that way. And I think Megan is incompetent, but that's not part of this conversation. What is part of this conversation is this biomass plant. And I've spoken to all of you, well, almost all of you, regarding this. My own supervisor doesn't feel that he needs to inform a member of the community about these matters.
Thank you. Again, if you wish to speak, please line up in the back of the room so we're aware that you want to speak on this item.
Michael Falvey, District 2. Number one, I don't believe the board is being asked to, and I quote this last person, not gentleman, you're not being asked to back this project, you're being asked to adopt a resolution supporting it. To me, personally, I back Mr. Walensky 100% on this item, and any supervisor that does not back this resolution, and this board does have a history of not supporting some
very good resolutions. But any supervisor that is not back supporting this resolution, supporting this effort, shows where they stand concerning our county's economic abilities and also our environment. This should be a 5-0 vote. All you're doing is voting to support this. You're not voting to back anything, from what I can see. Number two, this person disrupted the consent agenda, and the public never got another chance to call up any of the items because he went 3 through 17, and so it never came back to the public if we had any questions about a consent agenda. All of a sudden, it all just went away except for the ones that the board called. That was wrong. And number three, I also concur with Mr. Walensky about, I'll quote one word, brains. The person who is questioning another person's brain, so the problem is the person with the problem with the brain. So, thank you, Ms. Stedfeld, for what you do. Appreciate it. And you guys got to go 5-0 on this one. It's just you're not putting any money out of your pocket, I don't believe, or my pocket, or anybody's pocket out here. You're just backing it. Come on. It's for the economy and it's for the environment. 5-0.
Good morning, Board Chairman, Supervisors, and staff. My name is Jan Bray. I'm a registered professional forester. I live in Amador County, but I work over here a lot. We used to have a local biomass facility in Buena Vista, and unfortunately it's not been open for about 3 years. They lost their contract with SMUD, and it hasn't been reopened. So we're in dire need of a local biomass facility that can handle material within 30 miles radius of where it is located. There's a lot of, as you know, a lot of woody biomass material within that radius, whether it's from federal lands, Forest Service, BLM, private lands, or industrial timberland. There's a huge amount of biomass material that could be utilized. As far as, put my glasses on so I can see better here. For example, locally, the biomass, or excuse me, all the biomass from Blue Lake Springs, I worked on that project, and there's a huge amount of wood that was affected by the western pine bark beetle and killed many trees, and then we had logs to deal with in the front yards. So people were rightfully asking for help of what we could do with that. So if we had a local biomass facility, we could do more fire prevention projects, more forest management, and handle it locally with reduced air pollution and also put some people to work. So I urge you to support this project. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Pat McGreevy from Glencoe District 2. I would like to make a short statement on the value of chips to Calaveras County other than the biomass plant that we're talking about right now. And as you probably remember, I'm very much involved in fuels reduction and forest restoration in our county. And before last year, maybe we had $20 million available in the whole Sierra Nevada for fuels reduction. Because of the Napa fire, Ventura, and all the other catastrophic fires, that $20 million per year for the whole Sierras is now about $600 million per year, all generated by the state. So the state's doing their job. Now the onus is on us to get that money out of the state down to our county. And the way we do that is we apply for grants. In order to apply for a grant, we have to have a fiscal agent to handle that money. And in our county, we have the Fire Safe Council. And believe me, they are now at capacity. They can't do any more than they're doing now. We have the new RCD, and they're working like hell trying to ramp up to fulfill the need. And we have also CHIPS. Now, CHIPS, this is not in their mission, but they have stepped forward, and they now serve as a fiscal agent for a number of grants. I have written or am writing right now 7 grants, all using CHIPS as the fiscal agent. I think the value of those grants is probably $4 million, something like that. So without CHIPS, there's no use in writing any more grants unless we can find another fiscal agent. By the way, county could serve as a fiscal agent as well. So I would just like to close and say that CHIPS is serving the county in a very important way. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Al Sakala, Taxpayer Association. And boy, there's a lot of memory going back with Steve Walensky. I remember a fellow up here, he was called the Rooster Man. And talk about abuse. Oh, I felt so sorry for him. Well, anyway, he looks like he's doing a magnificent job. I think our problem here is not having enough information to really endorse anything. You do need to look at the overall picture. You also need to look at the timber industry, which is more than involved with CHIPS. You should have a representative here with from the timber industry as to what their plans and their thoughts are. They are experts about timber, and so we recommend that you actually put this on the agenda and put together gather the information. That we got a little summary now, and I understand from Steve there has been audits done, and there's accurate records as to what they have been doing, and it'd be good to review that, or maybe have the county auditor review it. I'm not sure if the county auditor would want to or not, but in any case, we recommend putting it on the agenda, give it some thought, and it looks like you might support this. Thank you.
Marty Crane, Volunteer Center Executive Director. I don't say that very often, but I'm very proud of that. And I kind of represent the softer side of Calaveras. And I want to say that this is a fine example of what happens when the community feels passionate about something and they look for a solution, they come together, they develop a solution, they keep working on it. 14 years on this one. We have a similar example. We needed a women's crisis center. We needed one desperately, but was anybody doing it? No. Bonnie Newman said, we need a crisis line. By herself, she started the women's crisis line. It has now evolved into the crisis center. This is the power of volunteers who are passionate, and when you want to look at the timber industry, we've been looking at it. They live in it, and they have been examining all of this for 14 years plus. So I think as far as not having enough information, we have more than enough information, and they're prepared to provide even more, whatever you need. This is a nod. This is an opportunity for the county to work in harmony with its people and its passionate volunteers that, to be honest, if you had to hire us, you couldn't afford us. So anyway, please, 5-0, approve this. Thank you.
Hi, Jack Norton, San Andreas. This is a very interesting presentation given, and the one thing that wasn't talked about was with the gasification of this biomass. There's a byproducts being made, which are valuable, biochar and wood chips. It's here in the executive summary. And those have value in a lot of things like remediation of burnt lands. And I'd be interested to hear more of that if any more presentation is given.
I will close public comments and bring it back to the board.
Do you want to hear from Mr. Zellers?
Does the board wish to hear any more information on this item? Supervisor Clapp? Sure.
Members of the board, thank you for having me today. I appreciate you giving me your time. My name is Robert Zellers. I grew up here. I think I moved here before I could walk, and I've been living in Glencoe for the last 33 years. This is my home. I went to UC Merced and earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 2011, and then I just finished my graduate degree, a master's in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Nevada, Reno in 2016. Since then, I've been kind of taking it easy and been ranching over in Railroad Flat. That's been a good time, but it's also allowed me to volunteer for CHIPS and to work on this project, which I've been doing off and on for the last 3 years. So my objective today is to ask you to support our application to the Economic Development Administration. That's no more, no less. That's all we would like to ask you for. And what I would like to do today is to tell you more about that program and what we intend to do with that money. So when you think about an economic powerhouse, Wilseyville is probably not what comes to mind. However, it wasn't all that long ago, just beyond my lifetime, when there was a sawmill there that provided a number of really well-paying jobs. If you go into the store there in Wilseyville and you look at the tables, there are photos of downtown West Point, and it is filled with cars. Most of those cars are from the 50s and 60s vintage. If you go to West Point now, there's nothing there, except at night when there's a board meeting for CHIPS. This power plant, should it be completed, and it begins with this grant application here, could be just 25 jobs, full-time equivalent, with an average salary of $56,000 a year. Just for the plant. And then there's potentially another 75 to 100 jobs in field operations, and potentially another 10 jobs in truck driving services, and then the way that economic opportunity ripples out into the community. I mean, imagine just the number of sandwiches that store there is going to sell. That alone, right? So, with that, let me describe the EDAP to you and its purpose, what we intend to do specifically with that fund, with those funds, and then finally what this power plant can help provide. So the EDAP is it's a federal investment into rural communities like those in the Blue Mountain region. It's designed to provide flexible resources to financially disadvantaged communities and to foster innovation and creative growth. It aims to leverage existing resources and regional assets to support that growth. Now, in this case, Wilseyville has a lot of forest biomass, be that in timber or in the slash that comes from timber, fire reduction activities, restoration activities, and the like, or even, private improvements on one's property. So our project qualifies because we are in such a tough economic area there, and because we have this resource that is waiting to be used. So what this grant is explicitly going to cover is an investment in the infrastructure at this site to make it a developed industrial center. So along with that, we're going to be bringing water from the county to the site and installing a well, so we have a redundant water source. We'll be bringing power to the site from PG&E. We'll be building a housing facility for the power plant, as well as support buildings for the operations of the plant. We will be doing, let me think about this a second. In addition to that, Steve mentioned a security fence. All of these things are just the infrastructure to make this a valuable site for industry to come to and utilize. That's the objective of this grant. Now, should this grant go through and should we complete these projects, we have a number of interested parties who want to build this power plant for us. The power plant will produce 3 products. As far as we know, it could potentially produce more if we decide to further develop that process. In particular, electricity, for which we have a power purchase agreement with PG&E at a tariffed rate. Heat, which is a little bit difficult to utilize, but is nonetheless a valuable asset should we find a way to use it. And biochar, which was mentioned by one of the people in public comment. Starting with the latter, biochar can be utilized as a soil amendment in agricultural activities. It can be used as a method of carbon sequestration as well, because it is essentially carbon. There's not a whole lot else to it. It gets processed down, and depending on the technology you utilize, it can be everything from charcoal to graphene, and somewhere in between. The heat system, we had originally intended to co-locate a greenhouse at the site. That is still in our future plans, but is not within the scope of this project right here. In addition, we had talked about piping that heat over to be utilized in the Wilseyville Village. That is probably a substantial investment in infrastructure there to make that possible, but it is possible. And in addition, if we had more businesses locating to this site, we could pipe that power or that heat over to them. The last thing is the electricity. This is going to make up the bulk of the revenue for the plant. We have a 20-year agreement with PG&E. So as long as we are, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, we have that tariffed rate of essentially $200 per megawatt hour for that plant for the next 20 years. In our pro formas, this pencils out over that period of time. The last thing I want to mention is that this will substantially increase the pace and scale of fire safety activities and fuels reduction activities. That is a huge, huge thing that this county needs to be thinking of, especially in the wake of the Butte fire. On the second day of that burned through my parents' place, and we got lucky. We got lucky because the air support was able to come in at the right minute and push that away from our place. And then it burned back up there in the middle of the night. If we had projects like this to accelerate these fuel reduction activities, we can reduce the severity of future wildfires, because there will be another one. There will be another one. Anyway, I want to thank you for your time. I've talked about the purpose of the EDAP program, the scope of work that we intend to do with this grant, and then the eventual benefit that we hope to achieve with the 3-megawatt biomass plant. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer any of them.
Any board comments, questions? Supervisor Garamendi.
I have just a series of comments and no questions. First, I'd like to thank you, Robert, for coming. We always talk about our number one export is our young people, and so when they come back to our community with an education and want to throw their shoulder to the wheel and make our community better, that's a good thing, and I really appreciate you being here. It's nice to have the local folks, seeing familiar faces. I also want to thank the volunteer board of CHIPS for all the work that they do, and Jan, thank you for coming out today. I know you do a lot of work with the timber industry, and you know it intimately, and Colonel, as always, all your work for the community is appreciated. This, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. We are not being asked for money. We are not being asked for bypassing any permits or remits. This is simply an endorsement to build to get a grant to build a business park. I don't believe it's our business as a board of supervisors to get into your business plan, and you are a separate organization. You sail your own ship. However, I have direct experience in this field, and from what you've presented, you guys are in great shape. If most projects that I'd seen in my career had been as far along as yours, with a power purchase agreement, with the site, with interconnection studies, this would be a good investment. For the record, I am not involved in this project at all, but I will tell you, as a businessman and having worked in this field, you guys are in good shape, and congratulations. I think that, there was mentioned by public statement that we ought to be a 5-0 vote, and I agree. We're either open for business in Calaveras County or we're not open for business in Calaveras County. This is sending a message It doesn't matter whether you're a pellet manufacturer in Valley Springs, a winery up in Murphy's, or a yard down in Copperopolis. We are open for business or we are not. This is about encouraging business and trying to build back some confidence that this board actually wants jobs in this community. So I encourage my fellow board members, when this comes to a vote, that we do a 5-0 vote and show that these are the kind of things we want to have happen in our community. And we want jobs, we want young people coming back, and we want to have our forest safer in the future. So let's do the right thing. Let's just move this one along. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be inquiring on several different areas as a result of the phone calls and emails I received regarding this issue. Number one, and I don't want to put a burden on Mr. Walensky, but you may have to provide some answers for this for me.
I will endeavor to serve in his stead to the best of my abilities, limited though they may be.
All right. Not a problem, Will. We're going to be here all day. Mr. Walensky, in your presentation, you mentioned other supervisors in other counties have bought into this program. Could you just give us an indication of who those people may be?
Yes, I'd be delighted. There is the Board of Supervisors in Mariposa County has actually been involved in the selection of site and involved in the seeking of funds for their project. One of their members, Rosemary Smallcombe, has been the point person on that board engaged in that. In Placer County and El Dorado, they've had projects, some of which are inside the SB 1122, some of which are outside. I believe it was El Dorado that actually put considerable amount of staff resources and economics into that project. Is that the one that goes up to Tahoe? I can't remember whether it's Placer. Okay, it's El Dorado. And that's just outside of Truckee is a big project. A little bit behind us are, North Fork, down in the Stanislaus, I believe, county, has got a project that's 3 megawatts and also under SB 1122. Nevada County Supervisors has worked with their group that's proposing an SB 1122 project, and their staff, particularly their public works staff, has been assisting them in developing that. There's a Indian tribe, I believe Pitt River, up north. It's been working, maybe it's another tribe, but it's working in Del Norte and Sierra counties. Are also very involved in Camptonville is another site in which the Board of Supervisors has been active in helping select and permit the site for a biomass plant there. The goal of SB 1122 is actually to try to get a forest infrastructure using small diameter wood and all this stuff that's been taken out in thinning that is not merchantable timber, but could be otherwise used besides burning and putting a lot of smoke in the air. One of our problems here in this county is trying to comply with the requirements of lower carbon use by, I believe it was SB 32 or AB 32. Anyway,
AB 32.
We're trying to reduce the amount of smoke we put up in the atmosphere. Of course, we proved that we're capable of putting enormous. We can do 30,000 feet of carbon in one of our fires. But if we're also wasting all this wood on the ground and burning it, we're not helping ourselves in compliance with state law. This project, and I think the reason that many other boards of supervisors are keen on these small units is that they don't just support private sector funding of forest restoration and fire safe work around the towns, but they also help the counties comply with their obligations on air quality. So that's only a smattering. I forgot, there's already one plant in place. They just cut the ribbon up in Plumas County, where there's been a group working for a long time in that county, and their idea is to put small biomass plants, much smaller than ours, into hospitals and schools and county buildings. The county worked very closely up there, and the county biomass plant is now in operation, which is pretty exciting news. It's really the first one to break through run the gauntlet and come out the other end ambulatory.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walensky. And the reason I asked that question is the majority of the counties you mentioned are participants in high-risk counties in the Governor's Task Force for Extreme Mortality. And as you probably may be aware of, the biomass program, when we started looking at that as a committee, didn't have very much of a future due to economic problems and getting the private sectors and the utilities to buy into it. So this seems to be changing the wave, if you will, going towards that. And then they've developed a new forest management and health organization, which took those 14 high-risk counties kind of back from the table, put them in a work group, but they still have one representative. So we're still looking at the same goal here. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about your individual operation.
Yes.
You are a nonprofit?
We are. We're a 501c3, and we registered with the state and federal government, I believe, 8 years ago on that.
Okay. And the question came up in my contact with my constituents. They questioned the fact that this was a private enterprise funded by public funding. And I don't think we have that situation there. Being a 501c3?
We're a 501c3, but let me also tell you that we're setting up an LLC to finance and manage this. So we don't expect to be the only party in this, but it requires the investment, the folks who want equity investment to be selected by our board. And the LLC is already registered with the state, and it's called the Blue Mountain Electric Company.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the chair of that too, by the way, at the moment, but don't expect to be for long.
And your corporate structure is a board of directors?
That's correct.
Under the 501c3?
That's correct. We have a 7-member board.
Okay, are those members at large, or are they geographically selected?
They're members at large. We've had people from your district on our board,
Right.
actually 2 of them, and although one became a grandma and got distracted, but we've had good board members from a variety of districts.
What's the total cost of your plant at this stage?
We're selecting from a couple of different technologies, and each has a separate cost. The lowest cost would be $22 million, and the highest cost would be $28 million. Our final selection is about to be made, and it's too early to announce, but it depends on several things. One is that it meets the standards that your county has set in air quality and all the permitting that we've already established. So all these technologies have to prove themselves on the ground. Secondly, what kind of financing comes with it and at what percent. We are keen on having local equity. We think that there are too many projects that have happened, economic development projects in counties like this, that people come in and they want a 20% return on investment, and when it goes to 18, they decide to pull the plug. For us, it's sustaining the jobs. That's why we took a 20-year power purchase agreement, because we want this to last. And in order for it to last, we need that agreement, plus an investor that is in it for the long haul and agrees with us that local hiring preference is a key, allowing CHIPS to do the training and mother lode job training and Indian Manpower and others to be able to qualify local people to do this, being able to bring back some of our young people who could actually run this stuff if given half the chance. So our negotiations are not just about percentages and the amount of money some investor is willing to bring in at a high cost, but also what commitments are they willing to make for how long to this community.
Thank you. Have you...
May
Hi
I
there.
chime in briefly on that? This has come up a number of times of trying to bring young people back to this county. And, you know, I want to remark that I know friends who have taken jobs up in Oregon and then come back to continue to do projects here in Calaveras County because they care about them. And the reason they don't stay here and live and work is because they just can't afford it because those opportunities don't exist. Project like this is very tempting for somebody like me who's maybe a little overeducated to return and engage in an activity that is both good for my community and good for our environment. Thank you.
Yeah, you must
Not
have been
not
reading
that
my
Robert
website.
isn't good at a chainsaw as well. but-
Yeah, I can sling a chainsaw, I can wrestle.
Yeah, you must have been reading my website, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Your site location, have you already made that determination, and is
Yes.
it procured yet?
We purchased the site outright from the CCWD. They surplused the old mill site below their spray fields and the Wilseyville treatment plant. So we purchased 13 acres. We own it outright. There's no debt on it. And we paid for it not through grants, but through program income. And we paid it off 3 years early. They have also offered us an additional 5 to 10 acres if we want to expand and zone it for other possible woody biomass projects. But right now, this is the only thing that we're doing on 13 acres.
So that procurement and where you're at today, when you first started 14 years ago, how was that funded?
Through a variety of mechanisms. The first and probably the biggest funding was not so much an expenditure, but a savings. We have had many volunteers. A lot of the studies, professional studies, were performed by volunteers. I don't even want to mention their names. They told us to keep it anonymous, but that they gave us a no-price version on $30,000 or $40,000 worth of studies. We also got a woody bug grant called a woody biomass utilization grant that paid for some of the entitlement, the studies that led to the environmental entitlement. And that was the phase 1 and phase 2 of the environmental studies, the monkey flower rule out, previously mentioned, the spotted owl. By the way, any spotted owl that would want to reside on a mill site is probably suicidal anyway. So we thought that was a little superfluous, but we also had to study the waterways. There's the Blagan Ditch. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but we had the Blagan Ditch used to take water out of the McCullough River and take it down to the mill site, which filled the mill pond, and they could dump the logs in the mill pond and then move them to milling. There was some speculation on the part of the Army Corps of Engineers that the Blagan Ditch, which has long ceased taking water out of the McCullough River, was actually a navigable waterway, and we had 2 years of expense and effort to clear that. We spent the total amount on all of our environmental studies and the things required by the county came to about $450,000. And we got that through grants, about half through grants, about a third through volunteer, and the rest in program income from the work that we're doing in contracts and agreements with the Forest Service, the national parks, and BLM.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Thank you. Continuing the point is that I see this as an opportunity to have a full discussion. I really want to know what we're supporting before we get, it's like check the car out before you start driving it kind of thing. So you understand why all of this is going on.
Absolutely, and if I were in your shoes, I'd want as much information as possible, but I also want you to know that we're not asking you to endorse the project. We're asking you to endorse that aspect of the project which would make that site ready for investment. So you'll have plenty of opportunities forward because we have to come back for the PG&E studies. The final technology will be under administrative review. Your air pollution control folks are on it. Your folks in the Public Works Department are all over the roads. And by the way, we've made a beautiful apron up there. You should check it out. We even made room for the school bus parking that had been on gravel over on the side has now got parking spaces courtesy of CHIPS. So we've been doing everything we're asked, and we will have we have to take out building permits. We have to take out a whole lot of administrative work is yet before us, and I'm sure some of that will come before you.
Does this presentation include your timeline on how long it'll be before you're fully functional? And
Yes,
when I
can-
read this, I'll be able to
Yes,
see
that
that?
has timetable. This is again just timetable for phase one, which is the site preparation.
Okay.
So really, if you get down to the narrow moment of it, you are endorsing the preparation of an old mill site into a site ready for economic investment and development. That's the sole thing that you're being asked for today.
And what kind of grant share are they going to be requiring from you?
20%. We have approximately $370,000?
Yes.
$370,000 that we ourselves must raise to make this happen. And that will come out of our reserves, and it will come out of a line of credit from the NorCal Investment Fund.
And that is an overestimate of our total need as well. I believe it's $335,000 is our current match under the budget we have proposed. We're doing 370, so we have a little headspace as well.
Okay. I don't have a calculator in front of me to know what that contingency number is, but I'll look it up.
Contingencies, the total contingency on this project is $110,000, and the total grant proposal is 1.64, I believe.
Thank you. I noted that you did mention Fire Safe, which just got 6 grants for $3 million. So yeah, I do go to their meetings. They are kind of overwhelmed at the moment, to put it bluntly.
Yes,
it would be
we've been applying for funds for a decade, and all of a sudden it rained funds, and we haven't the infrastructure as Pat McGreevy described. It's very hard to get people who have the insurance and the liability and the employer of record and all the things that go with being a fiscal sponsor for forest projects. So we're rebuilding it from scratch. The whole, most of the industry around us, at least the infrastructure, collapsed over the last 70 years.
And we're within a unique moment of time, in a window of time, with CARB money that's now coming from the state in massive doses. It's just a matter of whether or not we can get the infrastructure together to take advantage of it, or whether it's just going to slip through our fingers into some other county. That's just reality. So I just want to be sure that, what your timeline is going to bring you to some point of being functional very quickly so that you can be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And that functionality, it's 14 years to this point. We got to know that you're going to be able to put something on the ground.
We're not as slow as it might appear, actually, but in many ways. But let me tell you that we just put $60,000 down for PG&E, which sets the clock ticking on a 2-year timeline. We have to be operational. We had to have it fully developed and tested. This is a very important step of that because it gets us going on the preparation while we complete our financing. But we have exactly 2 years from the moment that the final PG&E study takes place, and that $60,000 was a down payment to assure that begins. So from 2 years from this month, we'll either be in operation or dead as a doornail, which is why the timing is so important and why it's possible that we came to you without understanding the full measure of your needs for information on it.
Of everything you said today, that is the key statement. Okay. CCWD, they're not going to have a problem serving you?
They've been absolutely wonderful, and we bought their land, and I think they're grateful for that. But and we paid them on time, which they were surprised perhaps. But they've been good partners in this. They love the way we've fixed up we've completely redone the road, which they use for patrolling their territory. We have an easement through about 3/4 of a mile of their land, and we've completely redone the whole thing. And I think they've appreciated the partnership, which is partly why they're offering us additional land at the moment. We're also cleaning up their property.
That's all I have for now. I'd sure like to read this before we decide.
I've got additional studies and papers if you'd like to read them. We have preliminary engineering reports, feedstock procurement plans. We have a lot of stuff. If you want anything, let Steve or I know, and we will try to get it to you as fast as possible.
And don't forget the riveting stormwater protection plan, which is about that thick. If you ever get completely bored or don't want to hear a particular...
They did
that's
what?
a good read.
You have an SWPP?
Yes, we do.
I'm sorry.
Actually, it's required by your county.
I know, we just went through one on a low water crossing down in Diamond 20, so
Oh, okay, you know all
Yeah.
about this. All
it's
right.
beyond crazy.
All right. I want to back up just a little bit. I missed the opportunity at the beginning the chair recognizes former Supervisor Steve Walensky. So
I was hoping to skate under that radar.
and
I was going to say that I've been in rehab now for 6 years, and from outward appearances, not successful.
and I'll be very short. It's been 10 years ago that. Yes, and I'm very familiar with the CHIPS program from the incept and the beginning of it. And Steve and I sat on the board, for people who don't know, for 4 years together. And we butted heads many times on many different issues, but I've always been supportive of the CHIPS program. I think it's a great program, always have. And I will support it this time. I think it came from an organization, from a concept, struggled for the very first few years, 4, 5, 6 years. But I know that the people that are involved in it, you and I'm going to call him captain instead of corporal, are very passionate about of this program. And to get it to where it is, where it's sustaining and has been sustaining itself for the last several years is great. I think this is a step forward. So I will be supporting this today, and I hope the full board will support it when it comes to a vote. So you're welcome. So with that being said, I will call for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi, a second by Supervisor Clapp. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I can't say anything. I just got to finish this before I go. So give me just a moment.
Give you just a moment.
Should we take a break?
Wait. We can't take a break in the middle of an action.
Yeah, we can't take a break right now.
Let's just wait for Dennis to read it.
Again, we're just supporting their application for a grant.
With that, I would say aye.
You say aye? So we have 5-0 vote. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Hour and a half. Speed reading class.
Yeah, but still.
All right, we're back in action. We're going on to item number 9 on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
Item 9 is from Health and Human Services to authorize the discharge of uncollectible debt for 1 community development block grant and 3 home loans in an aggregate amount of $404,908.83. A budget transfer requiring a 4/5 affirmative vote to increase the appropriate line item to allow the auditor controller to process the discharge of debt and the auditor controller to discharge the aforementioned debt in our financial system.
Supervisor Mills, you pulled this item?
Yes, my question is that why weren't these thrown into a lien against these properties? In essence, if we go to a tax sale or whatever, we can at least recover some of it. To just simply discharge it without prejudice doesn't make sense.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services Agency. So these 4 loans themselves, we were not the senior lien holder. We were the junior lien holder, and there was uncollectibles funds due to insufficient sale proceeds.
So since we didn't hold any position of value, we couldn't push them into a lien against the property.
Given we were not the senior lien holder, whatever funding was generated from the sales of that individual home went to the senior lien holder, and we were in a secondary position.
Substantial amount here. Has this happened before?
These do happen from time to time. We do have CDBG and home loans that go into foreclosure. These are older loans from 2003, 2006, 2007, various timeframes. They happen for a multitude of reasons, death, et cetera. But we have taken a look at our processes so that, and made a modification to improve them, where the Housing Committee is able to learn it when they go into default quicker. So we're hoping to mitigate these more in the future.
Because that's really the direction I want, why I pulled this, is that in what way can we change the policies and how we vet these out to properly protect ourselves and the interests of the county rather than get to this point of writing them off. I think this is more of a policy discussion than it is process discussion at this point.
Agreed, and I can assure you that we have made modifications to our policies and systems to bring them back, or excuse me, as I just mentioned, to learn about them quicker and to make sure we're better positioned. We're doing closer portfolio management than we have before. We have a very active housing committee now composed of representatives from different parts throughout the county. So we are making the necessary adjustments to continue to improve. But these are loans who, with also in partnership with the auditor's office, we have made this determination that this would be in the best interest of the county.
And some of these did go through the 2008, 2009 crunch, which probably contributed to some degree as well.
Yes, I mean, I can't speak to that affirmatively, but yes, you're correct. These were loans from 2003, 2006, 2007 timeframe.
Okay. I just want to know that we are changing our policy or reviewing our policy so that we can start to make some corrections.
Understood.
In oversight.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Kristen, are there any other ones of these that could be coming to us in the future?
They're for different reasons. These always have the potential to come to this board for these types of matters when it comes to home and CDBG home loans. There's another one we're looking at, but it has a little bit more complexities to it, so we haven't, as staff, looked at what the recommendation is going to be. But again, each individual situation is different, and so we will be transparent with the board when we do have one.
Are there any potential ones coming forward, like you mentioned that one, that were the junior lien holder on?
Where we're the junior lien holder?
They're all
junior.
They're all junior.
Yes, there's situations.
Well, I know there's situations are, but
yeah.
I'm talking ones that could be going to vault, like the one you just mentioned. Was that something that we are junior lien holder on?
Actually, in that one, I don't believe, is Rebecca here? I don't believe we are the junior lien holder. That one has a more of a...
That would be my concern.
Yeah,
yes.
I hear you. Understood.
Okay, so Supervisor Oliveira.
Yeah, question, Mr. Chair. There's 3 items in this agenda item. Do they all require a 4/5 vote? Yes. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear.
We'll open up public comment. Any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Supervisors. Al Sakala, Taxpayer Association. This probably should have been not on a consent agenda. Pretty significant stuff here. Taxpayers are going to be hit for a lot of money. And it does need to be changes. And it doesn't look like we're prepared to get into the details on the consent agenda. When you make loans, you get an appraisal of the likely value of the property so that you know what your exposure is. And maybe there was no appraisal done. Maybe the appraisal was done, but it was ignored. We don't know all that. This should not be on the consent agenda. We recommend that this go back to the regular agenda, and even if a study session needs to be done, to look closely at the procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again. It's not complicated. when you have to write off money because of a bad loan. Sometimes the bad loan is in the making when it's done. When the loan is created, it's set up to fail. We've seen this with the federal government doing it. We had a recession over that. And there's no need to repeat that kind of stuff anymore. And so more thought has to go into this. And if the Board of Supervisors is responsible, then it needs to see the actual plans so that it doesn't happen in the future. Thank you.
Vicki Ranke, Calaveras County. Actually, Al pretty much said it all, and I do agree this should not have been on a consent calendar. And I did want to bring up, I know a couple of years ago at a board meeting, we went through this same thing, and I'm assuming it was a different set of loans that we wrote off, and at that time, we changed it from loan money to a grant so that it could be written off. And I remember that conversation, so I was just curious too, and for you guys to know, how much have we had to write off on these kind of loans. And I think for us as taxpayers, these are the kind of programs that we understand. We're trying to help people who are poor, but people that are poor don't have money to make payments on houses. And so this is the kind of stuff that we get into, and the taxpayer loses in the end. So anyway, again, piggybacking on what Al had already said. Thank you.
Every bit as much, if not more, than this is a comment on item number 9. It's more a comment on the process. And I would like to use this opportunity to point out what I see as a problem with it. As you're well aware, some time back you adopted the new amendments to the rules of procedure, which disallow me from raising points of order as a member of the public. And I have to rely on the 5 of you and staff to do that. Today, Carl pulled the entire consent agenda, and then, so I thought, okay, I don't need to pull anything because he pulled the whole damn thing. And then without asking the public if anybody wanted to comment on any of the other items, you just put a stop to it. And this is the best I can do towards raising a point of order, is to partly abuse my public comment on item number 9. And I just would like to point that out, that I can't count on you guys to catch stuff, and you won't allow me to help. So that's my comment.
Any other public comments?
I'm Will Moore in Rancho Calaveras. And if I understand this right, it was grant money that was loaned out to start with. If it was grant money coming in, I don't see how the taxpayers are on the hook for anything writing it off. But I may not understand what this says.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, close public comment. Kristen, you want to answer some of the questions that were asked?
Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services. The last comment is correct. This is grant money from the federal government. These individual grants do have the ability to be turned in their loans, but they have the ability to be turned into grants. It's a pretty regular practice with single rehabilitation loans and with home loans, and that's what's going on here. Be happy to provide in further detail about what the process is now, given that CDBG is administered out of Health and Human Services, and we could be happy to share what that process looks like and how things are evaluated. But yes, just to make very clear information, this is CDBG funding from the feds. This is not county general fund specific. Okay.
Kristen, thank you. No, I had a question for you. Anyway,
You're welcome.
I'm familiar on some of the grants that we have, And to my understanding, some of these grants come from the federal government. As they're paid back, we receive the money and where we can loan those back out.
Yes and no. So they just made a modification this past year, and you're probably referencing the last board item that we brought to you in regard to CDBG, where we were talking about program income, et cetera. You're correct. So there is, when there's a payback of funding, there's the ability to utilize some of that program income to kind of further the program and provide additional resources. There was a modification that was made this past year to these programs, though, where that money is kind of a first in, first out, so you cannot touch your grant money that you've received in the current year until you expend the program income that you have in your coffers. And so it made a small modification, but yes, in essence.
And we get the interest that builds up on that too, right?
I believe there's an interest account. I don't want to specify that a little bit.
Okay.
An interest-bearing account, that'd probably be more of an auditor question. I can get that, though.
Thank you.
And
Supervisor Mills?
thank you. Kristen, I do appreciate you putting the numbers down.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's important. I would also like staff to give us an outline of some type of what that process looks like. I think it'd be valuable for us to understand what that is, and then we can provide input if necessary as to what we see, and give us a little bit of a historical perspective as well, so that we can see some of those modifications or changes that have occurred, even going back to when I was first involved back in the early 80s. So they've morphed into a lot of different things, and I think we need to more clearly understand what that looks like.
Understood.
Thank you.
So, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to move it.
I have a motion by Supervisor Clapp. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Garamendi. Thank you. Call for a vote. All
Thank
in
you, Jack.
favor?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, regarding public comments on procedures on the consent agenda, I do have a little concern of the fact that they pulled the entire consent agenda on the request of Mr. Stroughton, and now we voted to accept the balance. And I want to make sure that we have clarity that the opportunity for the public to pull a consent agenda has been addressed in that text.
We've moved on. We've already voted on it, so we can't pull it back. We voted.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had an explanation.
All right, moving on to item number 13, Madam Clerk.
Item 13 is from the Administrative Office to make findings that an emergency exists and that an action is necessary to respond to such emergency. 2, dispense with competitive bidding requirements pursuant to County Ordinance Title 3, Chapter 3.29 and Chapter 2.5, Emergency Contracting Procedures, Section 22050 of the Public Contract Code, and authorize the purchasing agents to let an emergency contract with All Sierra Roof Company Incorporated of Jackson, California for emergency repairs to the roofs of buildings A, D, and E of the County Government Center campus. This requires a 4/5 vote of the board.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bonnie Rich, administration. Over the years, the roofs of buildings A, D, and E have experienced some significant leaking. Many years ago, more than 20 years, I don't have an exact date, the county used inmate staff to put what we call construct dog houses over the various skylights. We had leaking. It's assumed that those leaks were coming from deteriorated roofing and skylights. Those dog houses, if you will, have now significantly deteriorated. We have been working diligently with establishing plans and specifications to put the full replacement of the roofs for buildings A, D, and E out to bid. However, we're not quite there yet, and so we need to do some emergency repairs to those skylights. And essentially what that entails, and I have some information to hand to the board that I received, and public, if the public is interested. I have some extra copies here. What we have done is we have, through our contracted construction manager, project manager, we have secured a contractor to perform some emergency repairs to these skylights while we finish preparing the final specifications to put the full replacement out for bid. We hope to have those final plans for full replacement done this winter, putting the project out to bid, and hopefully with work to begin in the spring. So as you will see from the drawings prepared by our contracted architect, Aspen Street Architects, they're going to remove the existing dog houses, if you will, and we are going to, hold on one moment, please. And then we are going to replace those and then put, the second step would be to put a seal coating to temporarily seal the asphalt rooftops until we can conclude going through the bid process. The cost of this repair, we don't have final numbers yet, but it's estimated to be around $100,000. It's about $74,000 to rebuild, to remove and rebuild those doghouse structures, if you will, and then possibly another $30,000 or $40,000 for the silicone sealant that we need to protect the roofs until we go through the final bid process. Pursuant to not government code, public contract code, we need the board to make findings that an emergency exists. These roofs, these dog houses, these skylights will not tolerate another heavy winter event. And so normally in this dollar range, under public contract code, we would let informal bidding procedures, but because our current ordinance is not up to date with public contract code, we would otherwise be required to put this out for bid. There's not adequate time to do that, and that's why we are here before you today to ask for approval to allow the CAO to let a contract with All Sierra Roofing out of Jackson to perform this repair work. We are also required under public contract code to keep this item on the agenda for subsequent meetings until the project is complete, to keep the board informed of the progress. We're working on the contract now in anticipation of the board approving this item. We expect that the work will take approximately 2 weeks to complete, and I also have our construction manager here for any technical questions that the board may have.
Yeah, I pulled this item, and you've covered some of the reasons. Well, the major reason why I pulled this item. I understand emergency, declaring emergency, and not doing the competitive bidding portion of it. But obviously, we've got a contractor that we've had discussions with and has probably been up on the roof and looked at these things. Yet we're being asked to okay this without any dollar amount here whatsoever. You just provided some cost estimates. But that wasn't provided in here. It was just, it's going to cost more than $25,000. That's like writing a blank check. And even as a homeowner, if I had this type of situation at my house, I would call a contractor out and get somewhat of an estimate on what it's going to cost and have that presented to me. That's not what's been done here. You obviously had some figures, but they weren't deleted in. They were deleted out of the package that we have. And I'm not even sure at this time, with the contractor looking at what's up there, your estimates are even going to be correct, because this is like what we call a tenant improvement. When you start tearing into something, you find other things, and then that starts escalating the costs. Well, you can't. We can go ahead and caulk this right now, but I'm telling you, it won't make it through the winter because you got other issues over here. So we need to be very careful when we tear these dog houses off, and we're simply going to caulk around it for the winter so we can get to it out for bids next year. that we're not throwing good money away and out the window and next year paying for it threefold because of what we did. I'm not sure if it was looked into putting something in place over these dog houses to provide some protection until we can get to it and spend good money and get it repaired correctly that's going to last or not. I simply had these questions that I felt that need to be asked before I approve something like this.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct, and I apologize. I did have estimated numbers at the time I submitted this agenda item. In working with our project manager, we were hoping to secure exact numbers. I should have at least included the estimated numbers. I'm fairly confident that between the facilities manager, Thomas Construction Company, our contracted project manager, construction manager, that they have torn through those dog houses. They know what's there. We are trying to prevent having an unsightly and not as secure tarp, if you will, covering over those. Part of the reason why we are required to keep this on the agenda is so that the board is fully aware of what we're doing, how much we are spending. But you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. I should have included those estimates in the agenda item, and I did not, and I apologize for that.
Okay.
I have a
board
question.
comments?
I thought this came months and months ago. We approved to replace the roofs in the air conditioning units. I thought that was towards the end of last year.
That was for permanent fixes, I believe.
Yeah, so why didn't we do that at that time? We painted the building, we put gazebos up, we did everything, but we didn't do the roof. I mean, that's, I thought that's the reason I voted for that package at the time, because we needed the roof. And, now we're a year later, and we need to make a patch job, because we're going to find the same problem underneath those ACs. Those will have to be lifted up, and those, the gutters and stuff around those will have to be redone. So,
Supervisor Clapp, just for some clarification, and for the rest of the board, within our capital improvement budget, we have a project established for the re-roofs of buildings A, D, and E. We have a separate budget line item for HVAC. My understanding is, other than the conversion of the R22 to the new environmental R407, I believe it is.
410.
Which we are, pardon me?
410.
Okay. Which is, we're required to phase out by, I think, 2020. My understanding is the HVAC units that are on top of A, D, and E are currently in good shape, other than those conversions we have to make for the refrigerant. We have a number of other facilities whose HVAC systems are not in such good shape. And then I want to let the board know that, in good faith, prior to my appointment by CAO Lutz, the staff that was here did attempt to begin the re-roof project. All right, these didn't just deteriorate in the last couple of years. This has been going on for a number of years. However, they, not being intimately familiar with public contract code and the acquisition methods that we're required to use, I had to put a halt on it so that we could be sure that we were in compliance with public contract code, because if we don't do things correctly and follow those procedures in accordance with state law, we could be at risk of losing funding in other areas. So it's critically important that we not only follow state law, but that I continue to work to update our own public works ordinance, which I'm very excited to report that I will be working with the new public works director on. We speak the same language, so I'm very excited about that, and we will be bringing that forward to board. So once that happens, we would otherwise be using, and there are some other things that we have to do to get us to the point where we can even use informal bidding procedures, and we are working on those now. So I don't know exactly what items were brought forward previously, Supervisor Clapp, that the board approved, but we have a number of projects that we are working on in terms of HVAC replacement. When I arrived, we had just started and concluded the archive re-roof, which is an item that Mr. Moss and Mr. Martin brought to this board for approval. And we did complete that work, and that facility is done. And so this is an effort to work on the main government campus facilities that are in dire need of repair, and we have to take this initial step in order to allow our architect time to finish plans for specifications, which we would have to bring then back to board for this board to adopt before we put back out for bid.
And if I could add to that, the item that I believe Supervisor Clapp was referring to was the space plan that was the foundation for the CIP projects that that Bonnie's noted. So that was getting the board's broad direction in terms of these are the key capital improvement projects. Each of those projects still has to come back for the board for individual approval, such as the jail demolition, the construction of a district attorney building, the re-roof project. All of those still need to come back to the board for specific action. That just helped identify source of funds and park those funds.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Well, let me just add to this. You got a tire on a car and it's leaking air and it's got a bulge on the side, and we've known about it for the last 20,000 miles. At some point, we're going to have to say, we've got to take care of this, but we've known about this for years, by admission, for years. And so to suddenly declare it an emergency, that doesn't fit. The two are in polar opposites. We've known about it. So I think that it's critical that part of our package has to have an estimate from whoever it is that's going to do the work, because I've done construction work too. I built my own house. And when you start getting into some of this stuff, the depth of repair could go to areas that you just didn't realize were even there. So I would want to be sure that the contractor understood what he was getting into and that he laid out in detail. I don't want to see half of the costs go to change orders, and that could easily happen with a project of this scope.
Sure. Mostly change orders, and absolutely, and just so that you know, public contract code is very strict on what kinds of change orders we can do and limit those dollar amounts of change orders depending on the size of the contracts, for that very reason, because there's nothing like coming in with a low bid and then ramping it up with change orders. I completely understand that, but we have very strict state laws that tell us what we can and cannot do. And the contractor, hence the plans prepared by our architect, our contracted architect, to call out specifically the work that will be done. So there is no surprise, and I'd actually like to bring Corey up for a moment if she can just expand a little bit on the cost and the work that's been done to get us to this point to help us understand.
Before you do that, Bonnie, before you do that, I wanted to answer another question.
Oh, sure.
In terms of because there is a delineation between emergency versus not emergency. Obviously, we knew that the roof project needed to be done. That's why we were putting together the larger bid. When the rains came 2-3 weeks ago, that's where we identified a number of leaks that elevated it to the level of now this is something that we have to address these leaks, because if we continue to let this progress throughout the winter, we potentially sustain much heavier damage than if we didn't do something. That's the delineation or the indication of that event was the trigger for this is now an urgent item.
And I'd appreciate your willingness to expand with that comment, but that wasn't in the board packet. Didn't see that here.
Wasn't in the board. That's our concern. We're asked to prove something here that it's not clear. So, Corey.
Well, so I will apologize first for that not being in the board packet. It is quite a challenge when you have to identify something 3 weeks ahead of time, and then the architect was working concurrently on these drawings while we were trying to get this in front of you, so that we weren't waiting another 3 weeks in order to get further into that winter months where we're really worried about having anything exposed and open when we go to do those roof repairs. At present, what is currently being proposed is not necessarily a temporary fix. This is a permanent fix for these dog houses. These dog houses are structural steel supports that are welded back into the structural trusses of those buildings on concrete parapets. So the real thing that's only being replaced is the deteriorated fascia and the roofing and the wood trusses that those dog houses roofs sit. This contractor was intricately involved with the architect in the design of the correction. So they're very familiar with what's going on with these 3 different buildings, and I do not anticipate seeing a change order from them unless it has to do with building E in the building department. We have some ductwork extensions that are coming up through the doghouse in order to be able to extend heat exchanger that comes up through that particular building. There is only one HVAC, or excuse me, two HVACs that are being critically impacted by this, and because the dog houses are a separate proposed fix from the fluid roof that we propose to patch with, there is no impact on any of the HVACs. Those HVACs that are on those buildings right now, there's only one that they've identified that potentially needs to be replaced within the next 3 to 5 years. So the other ones they've determined are in good condition and are part of the anticipated HVAC upgrades. The package that Supervisor Clapp was referring to was originally prepared but did not have enough information for the contractors to be able to do a bid by the public bidding code. There's some asbestos removal testing that needs to be done and applied to that if we're to move on and do a full roof repair. That's why we propose to do this in a staged fashion so that we aren't wasting money and that the money that we go towards the dog houses completes that portion of it. These temporary fluid, the temporary fluid silicone that would go over the top of the roof for a temporary fix actually is a 7 to 10 year temporary fix. So it also opens up the option of being able to stage or manage budget full roof replacement over a 7 to 10 year period with this fix that would be on. But we haven't received an estimate from the contractor from that portion yet. And so our hope was that the original skylights are the culprit of the leaking, that once we fix the dog houses, the rest of it is going to be a process of elimination. If it appears that we do have to go through with the silicone, then at that point in time, we would be able to represent that and bring that back based on any numbers or estimates that we would have. And then we could compare that to then what would happen if we then need to go on to a full roof replacement, not including the dog houses. So this would just be then flashing up the sides of the dog houses and then putting on that exterior liquid roof that we would go on with that.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Corey?
Yes, sir.
Was there any investigation by the contractor as to which items are going to be extensively repaired or minorly waterproofed? Was there any dismantling in the bid process?
Yes, sir, there was. We did have them remove a portion of the doghouse on building D so that we could look inside to see what the resolution was going to be. We are finding that in those dog houses, they're, and again, on concrete parapet walls, there's about a 2-inch weep holes that are through there that they feel that also are part of the culprit. So that is going to have flashing that is going to be then covering that. The deterioration of the wood fascia, it's a 2x4 fascia on the face of those dog houses. It is completely dry rotted. So what they're going to do in the detail that you will see is they're going to be covering that with flashing as well, so that that will have a permanent fix and be able to protect the flashing on that. But they did have a gentleman that took off some of the plywood, and we have a temporary patch on that right now. He crawled down into the location. We identified that it was wood trusses on the concrete parapets. So honestly, he believes he can get each roof done in about a 2 to 3 day period.
So the estimate that you have is replacing all dog houses?
On those 3 buildings,
On those 3
A, D,
buildings.
and E, yes, sir.
So if we find that we have one leaking dog house, let's say there's 3 on a building, 1 leaks and 2 just need flashing, the estimate is exactly that, an estimate.
So it is a very tight estimate. It's an actual quote that they had provided. All 3 dog houses have to be replaced.
Okay.
So the original problem came with existing skylights that the government center had, and the design of those skylights are in a vertical, they're in a vertical configuration. So on those dog houses, it actually collects water behind it instead of being able to divert to either side. So part of also what you're going to see in the detail are smaller 2x4 that are put in a vertical measure so that there's no water that's being held on that 2 foot on the high side.
I did see that in the detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mills, you have the light on? Supervisor Cloud?
No, it's okay.
Okay, we'll open up the
I
public.
have it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Garman.
Thank you. We have known about this for some time. We were notified of it this last spring. So calling an emergency is tough for me. As Dennis said, you had a hole in your tire for a long time. I also have a question. I'm not so sure. I mean, I know we're doing a permanent fix, using a temporary fix in emergency, but I'm still, when you open that roof up, we don't exactly know what's going to happen all the way through this process.
We're not opening the roof.
Okay, well, we're taking off the doghouses.
Yes,
right?
originally in a full roof repair, we would have wanted to change the aesthetics of the building and go ahead and open the roof up, and then you would have to go back to those structural steel supports and torch those and then be able to close the roof back up.
Right, we were looking at about $1 million project.
It would have been huge.
When we were talking about this spring, and we were looking at the capital improvement project. So I wonder, I'm always concerned that we're throwing good money after bad and doing something that could just suck us in rather than just doing it right and taking these roofs off and putting them in correctly. So I'm worried about starting down this thing and suddenly we've got $200,000 invested in this fix, and that's not the ultimate fix we wanted. So I'm nervous about it. These are prevailing wage dollars. These are state dollars. I'm worried about us not bidding it out for everybody to take a look at. Generally, with the contractor working with the architect, I get that works great in the private sector, but I don't. You guys know the rules better than I do. It makes me a little bit nervous as far as competitiveness, and we got to have a cap on. We have to see how much this is going to cost. I don't want to sign a blank check, and that's not to come against. I believe you guys, but I've also been a part of enough construction projects that things happen, and I'm nervous.
I totally understand that. I am very confident that this contractor is going to be held under control and that he has participated in the design resolution of these buildings. And so the proposal of a change order coming through, again, is I believe, a very low risk. It would be a significant cost more than what we're proposing to do if we went back and tore those buildings off, tore off all of the concrete parapet, the steel all the way back, and re-roof those buildings. And at present, the amount of money that had been designated for the original package would not have enough money in it to be able to do that. So the county would have to find money from different locations in order to be able to make that happen. The additional issues that come up in this is that, again, you were dealing with having a new facility director that was coming on board at the time that this originally was presented. Not all the information was available in the packet that would have been significant for those public bidders to be able to bid. So as we were going through this and he was developing a complete and full package, we found ourselves in the middle of a very high bidding competition year where there's a lot of work out there and people don't want to necessarily do anything for low money. So our bid package was going out at the same time that all the public schools and everyone else was doing their roofs. And so we had looked at having contractors come in, and we were having a hard time even getting anybody to come look at the job site so that we could have their opinion on different directions that we could go with a proposed fix.
I believe you. I just, I like to, when I build a fence, I think, okay, I've probably got actuarially 30 years left in my life, so I don't want to have to rebuild it again. We're benefiting from we're suffering from the bandages that former boards did instead of doing this correctly. I mean, I know it's going to cost more, but it would just be really important to do this correctly. Let me ask you a quick question. If we don't do this, I understand that we do have some leaks, are there a low-cost bandage, I don't want to say tarps, but is there a way to get us to the point where we do this correctly and pay one bill instead of an open bill?
We were looking at about $40,000.
In tarps?
In the fix that was going to be acceptable for taking care of this. So we can put tarps on there, and then yes, you're looking at probably about $6,000 of tarps on your buildings through the winter.
And I know they look like junk, but we're not made of money either. And
well, and that's not to ensure that that is going to take care of the entire issue, because if we just tarped the dog houses, there's still the potential of leakage happening on the other portion of the roofs.
I'm not saying that that's a suggestion or even an idea. I'm just whole thing.
No, I totally understand. We've looked at all of the different scenarios, and I mean, our best resolution and conclusion was to be able to develop something that could be a permanent fix that we could then build off of in the spring if we needed to come back, do it right, and flash up to those dog houses. And then, because when we go in, we do the final roof care. Supervisor Clapp's absolutely right. Those gutters are going to have to be taken off. We're going to have to reflash a lot of that's going on, and painting, et cetera. And so to us, the opportunity to be able to at least fix the leaking aspect, or what we propose to be the biggest devil's advocate of this situation, was those dog houses.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mills?
Ultimately, Corey, I'm not so concerned about whether something's sightly or unsightly. I mean, if I've got a leaking sunroof on my car, I'm going to throw a tarp over it. That's just reality. And in this case, that may not resolve all of the problems, but if you were to get a rain event tomorrow, somebody's going to have to do something. We can't, if we know that there's leaks and it's going to affect our employees and our security of our areas, of course, we're going to do something, whether it looks pretty or not. So I would hope that unsightly is not a driver here to whatever we try to do.
I don't know.
Okay.
All right, public comments?
I was just going to add to that piece. I would take responsibility on that piece. I know that originally a tarp solution did come up, and I was less than a fan of the tarp solution and asked that we come up with what would it take where we wouldn't do something that we then have to destroy. So what would be more or less a permanent fix, but wouldn't necessarily involve tarp. Certainly we can go the tarp route.
And tarps could be used for Office of Emergency Services in the future. There's other places for them if you buy the right tarp.
All right, public comments. Al with a smile.
Yeah. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. There's so many questions happening here. And again, should this be a regular agenda item or a consent item? Okay. We have dog houses that are covering skylights. Okay, the reason for covering the skylights was not that the skylights were leaking, but for some other reason. If they were covering the skylights because the skylights are leaking, maybe we don't need dog houses. Maybe we need a functioning skylight. Maybe are these small ones, like the size of a dog house, like 4x4? Maybe you get a 5x5 dome to go over it and seal it along the edges. So that takes care of the leaking skylight problem. Also, Other leaks on a flat roof, 3 coats of that snow coat, elastomeric seal material, does last 10 years. I have an office building, and that's exactly what we did. It works great. So sometimes architects and engineers are paid on a percentage of the overall job. And we noticed that when we had an engineer or an architect design some office remodeling, the cost went from an estimated $20,000 to $100,000. And some of that was government regulations on handicap stuff, but a lot of it, I think, is a desire that architects like to do on big ticket items. You can put that seal on there with rollers. You can use, you could use convict labor maybe. If not, then you got other sources of inexpensive labor to do that. It goes real quick. You got to let one coat dry first, and then put another one on, and then put a third one on, and you're pretty well set. No more leaking on your roof. So, do you need the dog houses? If the answer is no, if the skylight's functioning properly, then that's the way to go. Just get rid of the bad dog houses. Make sense?
It's not 36 seconds, Al. Taxpayer, use your money. God. I don't know who did agenda review this time, but it's certainly not up to par. You know, for a few years there, I had this job, and it was selling heavy equipment to the government. I liked that job. The one thing I looked for is, or one thing I did was I went in and wrote the specs to what every piece of equipment was, so that anybody bidded against me, well, they didn't have much chance. But there were a few cases where I dealt with the state of California and counties, and one of those cases they really needed a piece of equipment, and it was a very large gen set, and it was going through some water pumps, and it turned out they didn't just need the gen set, they needed everything, but they only asked for a price on the gen set. So everything else that came along after that, I just charged them the retail, I mean real retail on it, and I was able to get away with quite a commission on that. I have really a lot of confidence in Bonnie, and I really have a lot of confidence in even Tim. I mean, we didn't get off the magnificent start because, well, you guys got in the way. but you know, Tim's holding up his end of the bargain here. He's bringing you something through Bonnie today that they feel needs to be done. I have confidence that they can do this without it coming back to the board again. But if you did have questions, this should have been a regular agenda item, or you should have gone to Bonnie, Tim, and asked some questions beforehand. Please spare us. I think you've spent a good half hour on this so far. Half hour. We have some people on the regular agenda today that need to get to work.
Any other public comments on this item? Okay. Bring it back to the board. Any board questions? Any board conversations, comments? If not, I'll look for a motion on this item.
I don't like how it ended up, but we need to fix it, and I'll make the motion to approve.
You'll make a motion to approve this item the way it is?
Yes.
Do I have a second? That motion dies for lack of a second. I would like to see this item myself come back to us on November 6th as a regular agenda item, and with some additional information that we had asked for included in it for us to look at. I need time to go through this that was given to us, read it, understand what's being proposed to do it. It was just not enough information for me at the time I was going through this to approve this. I'm kind of in agreement with the other supervisors that brought up the fact that declaring this an emergency. I need to time to look into that and ask some questions of county council before it comes back. So I would suggest that we not table it, but have it come back, to stack the direction to bring it back to us at a regular agenda item.
Chair, I would agree. I think it's important for us to actually see the estimate that the contractor is providing as part of that packet. This would have been very helpful to have in our packet today. So again, to staff, giving us as much of the information as we need to make a good decision, a sound decision, is valuable. And I would very strongly recommend to do that in the future. So if we could bring this back on the 6th, I don't see that would be a problem as well. So I would second your motion if that's what it is.
I wasn't making a motion, but I'll poll the board. Supervisor Clapp, would you like, yes? Supervisor Mills?
Yes.
Supervisor Oliveira?
Yes.
Supervisor Germany? And I'm yes, so we have 5 for that.
That's coming back November 6th.
Yes. Okay. Moving on, before we close out the consent
Can I
agenda.
make a comment on?
Go ahead.
Well, just in the review of that, then, it no longer turns into that necessarily being the right proposed fix, because it's likely that they're not going to be able to move forward with this prior to that. If we get into, we're now into the 3rd week of November, and we certainly don't want to be having a difficult situation opening roofs at that time of the year. So when you're reviewing that fix, I'm just trying to think of a way not to continue incurring costs associated with architect, contractor, myself involved, until we decide if it's going to something that might be done this year or something that is going to be done in the spring, because that would change the direction of what happens with the architect.
At this point, I need to have it come back. I'm going to stick with what I had to say, that bring it back on the 6th with additional information. If we're past that date, then we'll have to look at that situation. Rest of the board agree with that?
Yeah, we already did.
So, sorry. Okay, before I close out the consent agenda, I hear from what I made a comment earlier, Supervisor Oliveira brought up the consent agenda and the public, the comments that were made about not having the ability to either pull or have a comment on one of the other items on this agenda. So I am going to ask, is there any other than the items we went through and anybody that's pulled an item, is there any other items that the public would like to make a comment
Chair?
on agenda item?
We have Area 12 sitting here. I'd
Yeah,
like to maybe, if we're going to do it at the end of the meeting.
Pardon me?
If we're going to do this, can we do it at the end of the meeting so we
I
don't
would
keep...
prefer to do it now because the members are still here. After lunch, they may not be back, some of the public members. So I prefer to do it now. And this is items you already had a chance to pull. You pulled and took them back off.
I pulled all of them, Gary.
And then you took them back off. So you've already had your chance. Tom, you had your chance. Tom.
My only comment is thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing that and making it right. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other member of the public wish any other consent agenda? If not,
Chair, before we go to lunch, considering Area 12 has been here all morning, and they have to go back to Sonora, I'm sure, that this is only a 15-minute agenda item. I would prefer that we run that agenda item if it's possible, allow them to go back to work.
I'll pull the board.
Yes.
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 Supervisor Oliveira.
Yes.
Supervisor Guerin.
I might need to run back and grab my sandwich and eat here, but yes.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I'd like to also point out, though, that the following item is also an informational presentation from the UC Cooperative, and they have been here all morning as well.
Let me say something about that Susie Kotzer needs to go to Lake Tahoe, so she's got a pretty far way to go.
Just keep it under 15.
Well, could we run until 1 o'clock and just plan on taking lunch at 1 o'clock?
We're good with that.
We're 7 minutes.
Well, okay, so that's item number 19. Item 19.
And 21.
No, 18 and 19. But
18,
19, she has a car waiting, is that what you're saying, Kevin?
Yeah, she came from Lake Tahoe, she's got to go back to Lake Tahoe.
Oh, okay. So 15 minutes estimated time for item 18, and then 15. Yeah.
Total 15.
Okay. Well, we'll do 18 and 19 until the 15 minutes. It's 12:30 now. It looks like we'll be going to lunch at 1 o'clock. So
Item 18 is from the Administrative Office to receive a presentation from the Area 12 Agency on Aging, updating the board on current activities and issues.
Well, thank you. It's actually afternoon now, so thank you so much for having us.
You'll need to turn on your microphone.
push it, hold it. There you go. You're good. You're good.
Okay, thank you. As I said, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. With me today is Doreen Schmidt. She is the planner for the agency, and together we will be presenting the PowerPoint version of our annual report. So we will be reviewing some statistics, some highlights, a few of our accomplishments. We'll talk about our annual report and how it provides a snapshot to our fiscal year 17-18. So we're reviewing last fiscal year.
Can you hold on just 1 second? I mean, Supervisor Clapp, can you knock the lights down over there so we can see that? Thank you.
Ma'am, would you introduce yourself?
We want to be able to see your hard work.
Who are you?
I am Kristen Milhoff, the Director of Area 12 Agency on Aging. Thank you, Mr. Mills. I was in such a hurry to get within my 15 minutes. So we will, we're also going to show how we work with our community partners to seek solutions and to encourage and enhance productive aging. So here we're going to show the statistics. Overall, the population statistics reveal that the foothill communities have seen a population decline over the past several years, but the 60-plus population has actually seen a steady growth. As you can see, all of our participating counties have seen an increase in population. The average percentage of low-income seniors in our public service area is 11%. The Elder Index includes all of a senior's basic costs, which include food, housing, medical care, and transportation. This chart demonstrates the gap between the Elder Index and the federal poverty level. The income gap is one of the reasons why it is so important that we continue our efforts at the state and federal level and local levels to increase affordable housing in our communities. Our staff and advisory council members are actively participating in the counties and the housing committees throughout our various counties. I'd like to review some of our accomplishments for fiscal year 17-18. We worked with our providers, staff, and community partners to develop a priority ranking system for our home delivered meal program. This system ensures that the neediest individuals will receive a meal first when there is a reduction in funding or there is an increase in need. We've never had waiting lists in any of our counties for our home delivered meal programs. We are one of, I believe, 4 in the state that does not have a waiting list. But we know that at some point in time there could be, so that's why we wanted to develop that priority ranking system. Requests for proposals. These are conducted every 4 years, and it was important to us that we try some different approaches to recruit in our recruitment process this cycle to ensure that we had some competitive bids. We sent out letters to different community partners such as hospitals, schools, and other social service organizations to invite them to participate in the bidding process. We were pleased that we did receive some interest from new organizations, and we hope with these new recruiting processes that we've developed that we can actually increase some additional people being interested in our programs and bidding. The agency was also very active this year in a national campaign to protect the Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program, otherwise known as HICAP. We sought assistance from our advisory council members, local commission on aging members, and the county board of supervisors and our community partners to participate in letter writing campaigns in September of 17 and March of 2018. This very same group all rallied together to urge the Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education Appropriations Subcommittee, ooh, that's long, to support the Title III programs. by funding them at the level approved by the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, which took place in 2016. The final fiscal year, federal fiscal year funding budget levels for the American, oh my goodness, I'm struggling, for the Older American Act program saw significant increases for the 2018, which actually undid a lot of reductions that we had been experienced for years. So we were very pleased with the federal fiscal year budget. Now we're just waiting on the next budget to be passed here shortly. So I want to highlight a couple of our programs. One is the Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program. So due to all of our advocacy efforts, HICAP was saved from elimination. The program surpassed many of their goals and continues their efforts in assisting eligible beneficiaries navigate the Medicare maze. The program saved 1,654 consumers in our public service area $1.5 million in 2017. Our staff and volunteers completed over 1,900 intakes and made approximately close to 4,000 contacts with our clients in our public service area. Our HICAP staff were very visible this year in each of our counties, providing outreach and education and partnering with the Veterans Mobile Outreach Health Van, food banks, and other service groups and health fairs throughout our public service area. And then our next program, Spotlight, is our health promotion. So we offer a variety of health and fitness classes such as Tai Chi, yoga, and strength training. These exercise programs aid in fall prevention, improving balance, and increase core strength. Participants evaluate their progress and have seen results in their strength and mobility. We currently have 3 classes in Calaveras County. We have 2 at the Vallecito Family 4 Fitness Center, and then we have 1 yoga class in Murphy's. So currently we have over 296 participants, and that's in our total PSA. And then our collaboration efforts. Our agency, in collaboration with UC Davis Alzheimer's Research Center, hosted a caregiver workshop on dementia and caring for the caregiver in Amador County in 2017. Caregivers received education regarding the different forms of medication, managing behaviors, and meditation, and future treatments for the disease. Also, as a member of the California Association of Agencies on Aging, we participated in a statewide elder abuse and awareness campaign, which is referred to as No Abuse, Report Abuse. We partnered with Calaveras Health and Human Services, Mariposa Senior Coalition, Tuolumne District Attorney's Office, the Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians, and Catholic Charities to host elder abuse and awareness events across our PSA. So now we'll go on to the Calaveras investment. While services are measured in units, the immeasurable effect of the successful service delivery means older adults can remain safe and independent in the environment of their choice. As you can see by the graph, Calaveras County match funds were $91,443, and the total dollars provided to Calaveras seniors was $242,723. So for every dollar Calaveras County invests, you're receiving approximately $3 in services. Now, these amounts do not reflect the cost of staff time in the administration of these programs. These are just services to the clients themselves. And then you can also see that HICAP in Calaveras County served 325 consumers and saved those residents $388,900 in fiscal year 17-18. So that's a lot of money that these individuals saved in their prescription drug costs, finding other supplemental health plans. So in closing, our success is due to our amazing staff, our governing board, our advisory council members, providers, and our community partners. Their insights, expertise, and guidance are the foundational strengths that are critical in helping us to achieve our mission. And so I'd just like to close with a quote. That's our wrong quote. Oh, no, it's right. Sorry. Do not grow old, no matter how long you live. never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we were born. And I thank you all for your time and making the adjustment to stretch out the presentation time to allow us to get back to the office. So we do greatly appreciate that. I do plan every year to come back to show you exactly what we've accomplished in our fiscal year and actually the good that your dollars, your matching dollars, go to the agency and what we actually do with those dollars. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Do we have any board questions?
Chair, just a comment. Kristen, my wife is doing the Tai Chi up in Murphy's.
Oh, is she?
And she was one with knee problems and mobility issues, and it has helped tremendously. And I think that anyone who has mobility issues needs to really closely look at that program and what it can do for them. So I think it's underrated and there's no education really on it. So to the senior public out there in TV land, take a look at this. If you have mobility issues, it will make a difference in your life.
Absolutely. And we started these fitness classes with our needs assessment. We conducted our needs assessment, and that was one of the top items that the seniors in all of our PSA wanted were more health and fitness classes. So we listened to what the needs assessment and what the people in our communities wanted, and we've only grown since we started those classes. We started off with one, and now we have, I think 11 classes throughout our PSA.
3 in our area.
And 3 in your area, yes.
All right, public comments. Carl?
Hey, Carl.
She knows me. If you want to know why I'm here today, this is actually the reason I'm here today. This is a very, very important to me as my parents have gotten older. They're in their late 80s now, and they're in their late 80s now, and I've been looking at relocating them. And with some of the places I've visited within the past 3 months have been the Petaluma Senior Center, the Senior Center in Monterey, the Senior Center in the city of San Francisco, as well as the Senior Center in North Berkeley. And I can tell you that seniors are a very dynamic portion of our community, as we have seen that they've as they have grown older, these generations are much more active. My parents walk 2 miles a day. They're highly mobile. In fact, my mother on one of those walks broke her hip, and Area 12, Clyde Clapp here, immediately contacted me and to see what they could do, what he could do in his capacity as a supervisor to provide whatever. We didn't need anything, but I always thank Clyde very much. That is not a voter endorsement or anything, because I never know who I'm going to have to work with. You guys change all the time. I'm still here. So anything you can give this organization, whether it's just a great round of applause, and in the future, if they come looking to you for anything, please look on them favorably, as they help a sometimes vulnerable portion of our population, but a growing portion of our population. I think we're at 39% in Calaveras County right now, the elderly population, and it is expected to grow. When I look at the Chamber of Commerce, I think, why aren't they emphasizing businesses that service that community? And it boggles my mind that they don't. But maybe you guys could go out there and shake the bushes a little bit and look in that direction. All right? Well, thank you very much. And I'll stick around for the burning, because I used to do controlled burning on my own property just for fun.
Any public comments? If not, we'll close public comments. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break. 5 minutes.
Just when you're ready.
Sorry. We just have time to get ready.
Okay.
All right, we're back. Madam Clerk, moving on to item number 19.
Item 19 is from the Ag Department to receive the UCCE Farm Advisor Susan Coker's presentation on prescribed fire in California.
So I'm Kevin Wright, the Ag Commissioner, and it's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce Susan Coker, who is the UC Cooperative Extension Agent, Farm Advisor for us for forestry and natural resources. So she works under Scott Onetto, and she's stationed in Tahoe, but she's still part of our area group. So we rely on her for expertise for forestry and natural resources. And she's going to give us a presentation today on controlled burns. So without any further ado, here's Susan.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Susan.
Thanks for having me. My name's Susie Coker. I'm a registered professional forester. I've been a forestry advisor for the University of California Cooperative Extension for the last 12 years. And the last 6 years, that has been the Central Sierra Multi-County Partnership, of which you are a part. We cover El Dorado, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne County. We have 5 academic advisors, and we're in line to get a 6th. We have a youth development advisor who oversees 4-H. We have a nutrition advisor that oversees our nutrition education programs. Scott Onetto is in weed science. Lynn Wunderlich is our farm advisor who works with the grape growers and does a lot of programming there. And next year we should be hiring a livestock and range advisor for our area as well. So I'm glad to be here. I've never presented for the board before. I did bring along some other information from my colleagues that they wanted you to know about. One of these was this agro-tourism classes that are coming here. Lynn Wunderlich is working with our agro-tourism program. So you have a one-pager there about that. So when one of us comes, everyone wants me to deliver their message too. So that's why you have that. So I'm here just to talk to you a little bit about prescribed fire and some of our extension programming and prescribed fire and what's going on with prescribed fire in the state. I'm going to talk a little bit about fire return interval and then where we've been with prescribed fire and where we're headed and some of the things going on, because there is a lot going on right now. So just to start off, we are in the Sierra Nevada adapted to frequent low-intensity fires. So before our era of fire suppression, we know that fires burn through our forests very frequently, set by Native Americans and also through lightning starts. So we have some ideas about how frequent that was. Basically, we've talked to Native tribes, and we've done dendrochronology research, which looks at scars in our tree rings. So go ahead, and I think here's a good, obvious example. So we have really great records in the forested areas of how often there used to be fires. So when a fire doesn't burn very intensely, it might just leave a scar on the bark, and you can go through, and when you cut out a piece of that tree, you can see how often there were fires. So this tree had a fire in 1797, 1802, 1810. You can see that it healed over after the fire went through. And so we have a way of measuring that, lumping it all together and dividing by the number of years. That's called the fire return interval. That's the time between 2 successive fire events. And so with a lot of research done in this area, we think that in our ponderosa pine areas, fires burn through generally every 5 to 12 years. Mixed conifer a little higher up in the elevation, every 8 to 20. As you get up higher, it's wetter and there's less fuel, and so those are farther apart. Up to the subalpine, where it probably was burning about every 60 years. But before we started in our era of fire suppression, probably 4.5 to 12 million acres a year in California used to burn annually. That's 5 to 12% of our landscape. So our vegetation evolved with this fire and is adapted to it. And that's a map that shows it kind of in a geographical sense. So you can see, it's a little hazy, but that darkest brown, that's an area where fire used to burn every 11 years. Lighter brown, 12. You go through to orange, that says about 50, and then you go up to the darkest blues where it's in the hundreds of years. And so you can see there's an elevational gradient. The farther down you are, the warmer it is, the easier it is things catch on fire. Also, things grow faster. As you go higher uphill, fires were less frequent because there was less vegetation, there was less fire season because it was wet and soggy more often. And so in some of those areas, we haven't missed as many fire cycles as we have in lower elevations where we're having all these terrible fires. So skies were likely smoky in the summer and fall. And then the chief of the U.S. Biological Survey in 1898 said, of the hundreds of people who visit the Pacific Slope in California every summer, few see more than the immediate foreground and haze of smoke, which is impenetrable to the strongest glass, right? So I feel like we're getting there. We're burning a lot more than we used to at high severity, and we're getting all those smokes like we used to. And so this makes you ask about fire suppression. So the idea that we needed to put out all the fires started in about 1905 with the Forest Service. It was a rational reaction to a lot of terrible fires in 1910. There was the big blow up in Montana that burned 5 million acres and killed 79 firefighters. There were lots and lots of fires, some of them due to bad logging practices that left a lot of slash in the understory. And so they began to stress fire prevention. In California, we held out for a while. There were plenty of local people, settlers, that believed that light burning was still an important thing to do. And that's what they called it, light burning. And all through the 1920s, there was kind of a raging controversy between those who thought that prescribed fire fit into what we were doing and those who thought it was a terrible idea. One example of backers of light burning was the Red River Lumber Company near Lake Almanor, who used fire on about 750,000 acres of timberlands. So it was well integrated. But then in 1924, Forest Service researchers concluded that it was ineffective, impractical, and indefensible. And so the state followed suit in 1924, and the Board of Forestry adopted a no-burn policy. And so that was how it was burning that was done by some of our earliest settlers was shut down. Yeah. So that has had huge consequences. This is from a Forest Service research station outside of Susanville, Blacks Mountain. All those green lines are fires, and then all the yellow lines are trees and when they started. And we can tell this from doing tree ring studies and aging the trees. So you can see there were fires happening fairly frequently up until about 1900, a few trees establishing after each. But after fire suppression, that is when all the trees started to establish, and we got a very dense forest as a result. And I think you've probably seen some of these pictures. There's a great book by George Gruel called Fire in the Sierra Nevada, who did repeat photography. This one is near Nevada County in 1919 on the left, when fires were still burning pretty regularly, and 1993 on the right. So after all those fires, all those trees just filling in because they were no longer scorched and kept thin by the low severity fires that went through. So obviously we have crowded forests, a lot more fuel, and now with all those fuels and dense forests, the trees are more likely to be killed. In the past, we know that we had some patches of high severity fire where all the trees were killed, but now it's happening very regularly, much larger areas than we think was natural. Also, the trees compete with each other, and so they're stressed, they're unhealthy, and they're vulnerable to insects and disease, which we've just seen a huge, unprecedented outbreak of bark beetles. And then there's other ecological consequences. So understory plants are shaded out. Deciduous riparian veg that used to be there is dominated by conifers. Mountain meadows have encroachment of conifers. And a lot of the open and non-forested habitats have been just filled in by trees because fires were not thinning out the forest. Okay, so that was about 1910, 1920. About 20 years later, people in the Southeast started to notice that they were starting to not see the vegetation they were expecting. So in the Southeast, longleaf pine, that's actually it on the left there, it has a grass stage, and it's used to frequent fire. And so they started to notice that trees, longleaf pines were not growing. And they had enough input from managers, from scientists to say, it's because we're not burning. So this was the first place that we started burning again in the Southeast in 1943. And as a result, there's a lot of expertise there that we just haven't had out here in the West. Until about 1947, that's Dr. Harold Biswell. He was a professor of forestry at UC Berkeley. He came from the Southeast, and he had experience starting fires in longleaf pine systems. That's him starting some pine needles on fire in his suit. He worked with California ranchers to develop some techniques for beating back woody encroachment that was happening as a result of no longer burning. So we started having the ability to do prescribed fire in California in about 1945. So CAL FIRE allowed range burning for range improvement. And some of your family members may have been involved in this in the past, or you may have heard your family members who were involved in this. So we had range burning. It reached a peak of about 200,000 acres a year of prescribed fire on private lands in 1955. And then it declined gradually. So, and people say that it was because more people started to move into those range lands, and ranchers started to be held liable for escapes, and it became financially infeasible for them. So we continued to understand that we needed to do more fire. Biswell in 51 started burning in trees, in tree stands, ponderosa pine, giant sequoia. And I'd say by about the 70s, National and Park Service folks and the Forest Service adopted burning programs. So we knew for a long time that this was a good strategy for fuels reduction, but it's taken a long time to really get off the ground. One solution developed for private lands was a program with CAL FIRE called the Vegetation Management Program, and in the 1980s it was suggested as a solution. CAL FIRE can come onto your property and assume liability for a burn. And it is a great program. It's just that their capacity to actually carry it out has continued to go down over time. So go ahead. So here's a graph put together by Lenya Quinn Davidson. She's one of our farm advisors up in Humboldt County for her thesis, and she looked at, since the veg management program, how many acres actually got burned. So there's a lot of reasons for that. One is that in our area, when we have a prescribed fire season in October, it's also the time when all the fires are going off in Southern California. So if you are a CAL FIRE firefighter and you were supposed to burn here, now there's a fire and you're being called to Southern California and you don't get your prescribed burning done. So that's a huge issue on private lands with having gotten prescribed fires done. I think that number at the bottom of 1415 has been going up, and there's a lot of focus on making that go up now, and money from the state legislature to do that. So here's where we're at now, about 50,000 acres a year, although this is maybe from a couple years ago, so I think we've done a little better recently. Federal agencies have been doing 91% of the burning, and there's been very little private land burning. But I wanted to show you that graph on the right. That's from the National Interagency Fire Coordinating Center that tracks wildfire and RX, or prescribed fire acres. So in blue is California, and in orange is Florida. So you can see in California, we have lots of wildfire acres, and we have very, very few prescribed fire acres. In a state like Florida, they have very few wildfire acres, and they have over 2 million acres of prescribed fire in their state. And I just wanted to throw this up to show you, Florida, it's mostly private land. So there's private landowners doing prescribed fire for the most part. So how can we get there from here? I think there's a general consensus right now that more prescribed fire is needed. And I just want to make sure to say that it's not to say that biomass plants aren't needed. I think the activities and developments here are fabulous. Mechanical thinning is needed. We need basically every tool in the toolbox to get at the backload of fuels in the forest. So support all those methods. And prescribed fire is a really important one that can be used by landowners. Forest Management Executive Order in May had a task force develop. They've started to meet. I'm a chair of the Technical Education and Outreach Group. There's also a prescribed fire working group that's working on trying to remove some of these issues. There's a lot of legislation. Some of you may follow much more closely than me. I know a lot of things just got signed in September, including a few items that are going to be looking at insurance pools for liability and trying to crack some of the liability issues for private landowners. And in that, In this current situation, we in Cooperative Extension have developed a little bit of expertise. We have a couple new fire advisors who are fire scientists, and they've helped us put on some programming for private landowners. So I wanted to just give you a little background on that. Except I guess I also wanted to tell you about the executive order, which was about $260 million that's going into forest management, including launching new training and certification programs to help promote forest health through prescribed burning. And so one of our issues really is we just don't have the capacity of contractors and workforce and people who are trained with wildfire and prescribed fire certifications. And so we are, the different parts of the Forest Management Task Force are working on that. And there's been recent, I think, SB 901 also, and a couple of others are working on that. And that's just the Forest Management Task Force. I did participate on the Tree Mortality Task Force, which you probably know was then sunsetted after the governor's declaration for the Forest Management Task Force. So a lot of those functions are ongoing. And they did advertise our workshops there, October 2nd and 4th. And so I was just here the week before last up at Arnold as a guest of the Ebbets Pass Fire Prevention District. And we had a workshop for landowners this fall. We had about 45 here. We had about 35 up in Colfax, Placer County. And then back in May, we had about another 40 at our research forest in El Dorado County. So the goal of these workshops is just really to start with a intro to what is prescribed fire for all of us, because it has, that expertise has skipped a couple of generations because people have not been burning. So we've had tons of enthusiasm. I'm currently supposed to be getting a CAL FIRE fire prevention grant to host another 12 of those over the next 3 years with private landowners to help them understand what their options are for prescribed burns. So I was glad to come here. I'm going to try and hit all my areas. This is the one day in classroom. And then the next day, in May, we did 2 days right at our research forest, and we put landowners in NOMEX, and these are all the topics that we taught about, and then we got out and we did some burning together because it's just something most people haven't experienced, and we did have some landowners who were like, this has changed my life. And it is very fun. Another option I thought you should be aware of is the Prescribed Burn Association. It's the model that's used a lot in the Southeast, where there's lots of private land, and basically landowners come together and help each other burn on their own lands. And my understanding is in the 50s that was pretty common. We had range burn associations that were active. And so there hasn't been one in the West in a long time. My colleague over there has been working with a community in Humboldt County, and that's a lot of landowners coming together and supporting each other and doing prescribed burns. So that's a potential model, and I've certainly heard a lot of enthusiasm from people in this area about seeing if they can get there. And then my official duty here is to tell you about the CAL FIRE Prescribed Fire Training Exchanges. So the reason I want to come now is just to let everyone know that there is a prescribed burn event going on here in Calaveras County, November 5th to the 16th. I'm a participant. I'm getting some fire credentials myself, and I'm acting as their public information officer, where I'm supposed to be figuring out who to talk to and sending out messages, letting people know there's smoke. And also, if you want to come visit or maybe meet the participants. Participants are from all over the country. There's 25 of them, and they're training for different level fire credentials. So we'd be happy to have you come out. We can try and see if you want to come out during a burn day to see what that's like, or give background on the local community. That would be really fabulous. So that's my actual reason for being here right now, is just to let you know and get any input from any of you about who you think we should invite to come and see the burning in this area. Let's see, do I have another one? And the training exchanges were started by the Nature Conservancy Fire Learning Network, and they started in 2008, and you can see they started in the center of the U.S. In some areas, like in Kansas, I have a colleague who works there. Landowners will get together, they'll burn 150,000 acres in one day in Kansas. True number, right? And so they have spread all over the country, And now there's 2 this year in the Sierra Nevada. We tried to have 2 last year, and they were all canceled because of the North State fires. And we still have this issue with, we're backed up by CAL FIRE, and then when there's a big fire, they all have to leave, and then there's no holding or supporting resources. So hopefully everything is fine between now and November 5th, and we can go forward with this. But we did try last year and had to cancel. And then that's just my colleagues who wanted you to know about the other events happening here in Calaveras County. And I did also give you this. This is a Forest Land Steward newsletter. It's written in conjunction between CAL FIRE and Cooperative Extension, and they carried our Blodgett workshop. So a lot of the stuff that I talked about there, you can find in the article on page 6. This was our event there, and some of the information for landowners on doing prescribed fire. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions, though I know you're hungry. Oh, and I wanted to acknowledge my Calaveras County partners who were super helpful in getting things done. Ebbets Pass Fire District, Doug Carson from the Pollution Control District, and other, Adam Fries from CAL FIRE was very helpful and very supportive with the workshop.
Any board comments, questions? Not? Public comments, questions?
Well, this is just wonderful. I used to do prescribed burns, and I used to do them without a permit, and I used to do them 5 acres at a time. I was well equipped. I had my own fire suppression equipment, and basically it was either I was doing a land use conversion, or I was just maintaining a piece of property. And I don't know how I stopped doing it in 2005 because of problems with the county, of course. But up until that time, it would be regularly every year I'd do at least 5 acres myself. Maybe I'd have one other person, one of the workers I'd get out there to help me out. But I thought it was the most economical way to suppress some of this biomass that was going to become brush and become a fire hazard. I didn't at the time. I had no other inkling of environmental concerns or the concerns that we have now. It was basically taking care of myself and stewardship of my own properties. But I'm glad to see that it's back, and I'm glad to see that people are supporting it. If I did it, I still wouldn't pull a permit because, well, heck, it's West Point. I can do what I want.
Any other public comments? Seeing none? We'll bring it back.
I could just address that to say that, in fact, there is no CAL FIRE permit required when you're outside of burn season, so you may not have been breaking the law, but you do need to have approval that it's a burn day.
Yeah.
So.
Supervisor Mills, you have a comment?
Just very quickly, I know that the U.S. Forest Service has really been very aggressive in prescribed burning over the years in their portion of the land, but the state has kind of held back to some degree. And I can remember when I was training back in the 80s and 90s that you don't put fire on the ground unless you're trying to save a life. It literally got to that point. So to see it turn around now and for the state to engage openly and educationally with everybody involved, that's a big step and long overdue. So I appreciate you wanting us to come before the board and explain what it is we're trying to accomplish here, because it will achieve a goal. It will improve the watershed and be able to improve water delivery even into Southern California and the rest of our partners if we can maintain the forest and the forest health in a proper way.
One of those slides showed that the CAL FIRE has been directed by their director to double the acres that are treated through vegetation management plans. And so there is a lot of support at the highest level to actually make these things happen and make everybody work together, which is really heartening.
We were so sensitive to this back then that we never used the term firing out. Mm-hmm. So well, even terminology was a very sensitive topic.
It's striking that you said unless somebody's going to die, we're not going to use it. You know, it did come after a huge fire season with lots of fatalities. So I think, things are all moving together right now, and hopefully we'll make some progress on this, but it's all happening kind of real time. Are any of you interested in coming to visit our burn? So if you are, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, just let me know. I think you have my contact information through the agenda, or should I send you guys an official invitation? How would that work? Okay, and we'd be happy to have you come out and see how it looks on the ground.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, we can go to lunch, which Madam Clerk is shaking her head yes. So we will go to lunch, and then we will return at, it's an hour, 2:15. We return at 2:15. All right, we're back from lunch, and we are going to go on to the regular agenda. Item number 20, Madam Clerk.
Item 20 is from Human Resources to adopt a resolution authorizing changes to the department analyst and senior department analyst job descriptions.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Judy Hawkins, Human Resources and Risk Director. And I do apologize, this one should have been on consent agenda. What I'm bringing before you today for the positions of department analysts and senior department analysts, we're asking to change the minimum qualifications, adding the wording of any combination of education and experience that could likely provide the required knowledge, skills, and abilities as qualifying. A typical way to obtain knowledge, skills, and abilities would be, and then it lists out the minimum qualifications. The purpose of this is so that since our applicant pool is changing, and even before the applicant pool is changing, we may require 5 years of experience and a bachelor's degree. We may have somebody with a master's degree and 3 years of experience. And we were only considering giving them 4 years of education a year. So it was not really matching up. This way, we can take a look at those that truly have either the years of experience or the higher levels of education, but may not have the years of experience. We have seen good applications come through, but they did not meet the minimum qualifications because they did not either have the level of education or the years of experience.
Is this language consistent with other counties?
Yes, this is the exact language that Tuolumne uses, many other counties are using. And we're also finding that there's more and more lawsuits out there. If you have an unreasonable qualification for a position, so this way we're also making sure that we are considering those that are truly qualified.
I see. Any board questions? Seeing none, do we have any public comments on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the board and look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Oliveira, second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on to item number 21, Madam Clerk.
Item 21 is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors to select one member of the Board of Supervisors to act as the 2019 CSAC representative and one member to act as the alternate for the CSAC Association year beginning November 27th, 2018. So this is an item that normally comes to us at this time of year, as opposed to in January when we make our usual bulk of the assignments. And the purpose for that is that CSAC requires that we send them the name of the representative and the alternate prior to the CSAC conference. And that is beginning November 27th. Otherwise, we don't have a vote.
Otherwise, we don't have a vote? Or
Otherwise, we don't get to vote at anything at CSAC.
So, do we have any bids for
I like the
CSAC
alternate.
representative?
Yeah, I would like to maintain my position as a CSAC representative, pending my reelection.
Supervisor Clapp.
I like the alternate, considering everyone complains about me not doing enough committees.
Who's our current alternate?
I'm currently the alternate.
You are?
Yeah, and I would recommend that we consider Mr. Garamendi as the alternate position to maintain what he has done for the last couple of years.
I want to note that we don't have travel budget anymore, so I'm not sure how this is all going to work out. But fortunately, most of the stuff is in Sacramento, so there's time available. I don't know how we're going to do San Diego this year for the conference. But, I'm not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere?
Not going anywhere.
Can this be revisited in January?
That's what you did with the
That's what
NACO
we did.
thing last
So
year.
we can revisit this in
Mhm.
January. So, any other comments?
Sounds
Supervisor Mills,
good.
your lights on?
Just to keep our assignment as it is until January, is that
January.
what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
I would concur.
Everybody agree with that? I think I agree with that too, so.
So Supervisor Mills, was that a motion?
so
That's,
we have-
if you need it as a motion, that's a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion and a second for that. He's maintaining, his motion is we keep it the same right now.
I would second.
So a motion and a second. Are there other comments? Public comments? Hearing none. Bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to supervisor announcements. Madam Clerk.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, such as mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Nothing to announce.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, I attended the Motherload Job Training JPA, representing Calaveras County.
We're in Sonora.
We were in Sonora.
That's where I saw it.
Yeah, Sonora.
Sonora Boardroom.
Not for that one. This was at the
I mean,
Motherload
Tukwalami
Job
County.
Training.
Yeah.
Oh, this was Mother
Yeah,
Joe.
it was another one.
We were at.
And then at 1:30 on that same day in Sonora, I attended the Central Sierra Child Support Committee board meeting, with Supervisor Tofinelli. All the report.
Supervisor Mills.
Yeah, we had a tour here last week of the CCWD facilities in West Point, as well as the Calaveras Public Utility facilities down the hill. Really great tour. Talked to the PG&E rep about some of the issues that I've been facing on my side of the county, and then also Copper Fire is in the process of working on a capital improvement plan to accommodate any future growth down there. The letter that the memo that Mr. Trump put out here, President Trump, within the last week, will affect us. And so I've been working with Congressman McClintock and Bureau of Reclamation to ensure that Maloney's federal water in Maloney's will remain federal water in their decisions. So if they go to a 40% unimpaired flows out of Spicer, Donalds, Beardsley, and the rest of them on the Stanislaus, the federal government will retain that water at Maloney's and not affect us economically with their draining. So that's all I have for now.
Supervisor Clapp.
I have nothing to report out.
And I have nothing to report that had to cost the county any money whatsoever. CAO Lutz, did you cost the county money? So you have nothing to report. County Council Megan. No, nothing to report. Madam Clerk. Before we get started, I understand that you and Rebecca went to a witches conference thing or something over the weekend.
Yeah, sort of, we did. We did attend the Witch Walk in Murphy's on Saturday night. It was a very fun event. And my comments also are along that line. I just wanted to announce that next week on Halloween, there will be Halloween festivities, as there usually are. So I encourage everybody to come by and take a look at how departments have decorated and how they're dressed up, and if there are some performances to view, and our Stone Soup food donations for the food bank.
And that was my segue for you to announce that. So.
Thank you so much.
So anything else, board members, staff members? No? Seeing none? Stand adjourned.
Diane?